Armchair Generals. This is Gamer 1745 here with Master of Command. And I'm going to just check to make sure that it looks like we are streaming live on the interwebs. All of them, everywhere. YouTube? Twitch, we are. Yes, YouTube, we are live there as well. Need to check these days. So, this is Master of Command. It is set during the 7 Years' War. And I love the 18th century. I think it's a really cool period to study. So, a lot I could say about it. I'm not going to get into any big monologues right at the moment. I'm sure I will sometime, but not right now. So we're going to go after this battle here that we started last time, but I got talking about all kinds of other stuff and we didn't finish. So we want to play it over again, because you cannot save in the midst of battle. Don't know why they put the flowers in their bonnets or in their hats. I don't. Maybe sometimes they did that. I don't know. Don't know. Okay, so we're in the deployment phase. This is what our battlefield looks like. This is our enemy. Our enemy is smaller and weaker than us. We can defeat this enemy. That is not at all a concern for me. The question is, can we do so without losing too many troops? We can replenish, but it costs us to replenish, so we don't want to do too much of that. I'm going to keep sticking this unit with the Gibbons. In the center. I'd rather anchor my flank with it. Let's come over here. We'll just make it 3 lines. You can make it 2 lines. Well, I guess you can't fully make it 2 lines, at least not this unit. You can make it mostly 2 lines. Or 3. We're going to do 3. That gives us a bit of depth. I like that skirmishers are right here in the middle because we have some woods that they can move up in and skirmish in. Don't think we need these guys out here on the flank. What do we have here? There must be musketeers. Yeah, I think we'll move these guys in the center here. So let's push them. Good spot. Man. Little. Okay, now let's look at our flanks here. Some mildly open terrain. Some very open terrain up in here. Okay, so these guys have carbines. That's not a terribly good idea to get involved in a melee combat, or not melee, but in a firepower combat with them versus a line regiment. But, you know, a good musket discharge, or musket carbine, whatever, discharge prior to charging into the enemy, that could be very useful. Guys will stick over here. Blocky. And our other provincial Freikorps types. Here we have Frederick II von Prussian. Frederick II of Prussia or Frederick the Great. Okay, some hussars. Let's also stick these guys over here. Okay, well, we do have 3 regiments here. We're facing 3 regiments, I believe. No, 2 regiments of horse. So either one of these regiments will outdo the combined cavalry force of the enemy. But we're sort of here with all of what's going on, preparing for the big battle that will come up at the end of this campaign. So, we want to grow our strength and not use our strength up. Okay, so I think that's how we're going to deploy. We don't have any artillery yet. We want to get some. Let's pause this. Pause. Issue to issue orders. Okay, you guys, you head out over here. We pause. Come on, pause. Aren't we? There we are. It's. Is that taking? Oh. Why that's taking? I guess just as a. These guys are slow in the moving. Pretty good in the charge, but just in your standard. So we, let's move you here. We send them on a long flanking march. They'll take a while to get there. And maybe not in enough time. Okay, so these guys here. Don't know if we're going to be able to make the hill, possibly. Let's set up on this side of the town. We have our gibbons for additional cover, which is really good for exchanging fire, and also very unhistorical. They would only be used in a either a defensive or offensive, like a siege fortification to besiege somebody. Put you right along this road with a bit of forests in our front. Now, these guys here, we will put them right about here. Good, yeah. We'll get that stationed here, but whatever. These guys can come right over right about here. Now let's let the full clock run. But they started to move up. I think I'll move these guys. There. increase the speed a bit here of the game. Okay, it looks like their horse has decided to move. This flank, which is fine. You want to keep these guys out of musketry range until we're charging. And hello, Arno, my friend. How you doing? These guys have made it to this position, so we'll move them to here. Much the fences will slow them up, but in the game, in reality, they would considerably. They'd either have to break some holes in them. Really don't think they'd be jumping them. They might, but... Okay, so these guys and these guys, there's some firepower overlap. We'll move these guys up just a bit more. Reread. I was checking firepower arcs. Oh, their horses are doing something. Quite sure what, other than running around. Okay, so charging. We're going to charge and counter charge with these two units. Standard speed. These guys come up in support. Let one of them chase this other unit here, maybe. Yeah. They got our guys. They stop. It's not good. Okay, but now. Arno over on YouTube, good. I'm doing very well. Just back from California, went to Thanksgiving with the family. Okay, now that these guys are fully engaged over here, trading musket shots, let's, no, that. Come over here to their rear. Not always whether you can win or lose a battle, it's how well you do that, including how well you lose a battle. See, if they could lose this battle but do a lot of, yes, Turkey Day, and I had some very, very good turkey. I have one particular cousin who, and I know I've said this before on the channel here, has really wasted her life. She's wasted her life. She's become I think a very well paid financial advisor when she should have been a baker. She bakes some of the most wonderful things, and good cook all round. I mean, no, sorry, great cook all round, but a wonderful baker. She bakes all kinds of great stuff. That should have been her destiny, is to be a baker, not some high-powered financial, genius kind of person. She should have just been a baker, and that would have been much better for humanity, at least for me, because I enjoy the things that she cooks. But what are you going to do? Okay, these guys are trading fire with them, partially because these are just the serf recruits, and these guys are better Prussian musketeers, partially because of the Gibbons. So what we're going to do here, though, because we want to break this again with less casualty, so we're going to move up here. And they this year they tried for the turkey, because they did get a whole turkey and cook that, is flip it upside down, and that did make the breast meat much more juicy. Okay, let's come over here. These guys have now look like they're charging or something. So we're going to charge them. These guys are going to keep coming to here, and these guys are going to keep moving to here. Guess we give one good volley before the large impact, and they're already retreating, but we can break them. Wow. Keep going. I don't know if over defeating the enemy gives you any bonuses here, because it seems like the losing army doesn't retreat, it just is conquered. Maybe it doesn't give you as many. I'm going right in on them, on their flank, and they're shattered. So the idea of shattering versus and yes, I am sort of thinking of trading musketry fire with my carbines, which I said just earlier not a good idea to do. But since they're engaging somebody else straight on, these skirmishers, they're not so much trading fire, but just firing into them. In victory, like I said, it was not really a contest of winning or losing, but how well you did it. So Arno, my friend, what holidays do you think, I don't know if you would know for sure, but what holidays do you guys practice in Belgium that we don't likely practice here? Okay, so we have modest amount of food, modest amount of ammo. Lots of reserves. So we probably don't need conscripts so much. Ammunition or provisions? We'll go ammunition. Okay, so these guys, something we want to move them up to sometime. Okay, so they're here. We can move them to veterans or grenadiers. So we go a little bit smaller regiment size, but improve some of these. Or we can come here. We stay the same size of regiment, with just minor improvements. I think we'll upgrade to here. Oh, it's locked. We have to go to 6. Okay, well, I think we may wait then. Resupply ammunition to our units, so our next engagement, we won't run out as quickly, at least. Alright, and let's resupply some men. You guys are very weak. These are, I think, the ones that got retreated. Belgium isn't real for starters. Oh yeah, sorry. Of course, you're Holland, Netherlands. Why did I say Belgium? I don't know why I said Belgium, Arno. I know where you live. Man, I don't know. I don't know why I did that. It's called the Southern Netherlands, and the day you speak of this is called Sinterklaas, which is Santa Claus, but and Low Country thing. Okay, yes, Sinterklaas, Santa Claus. Man, I don't know why I said Belgium. I don't know why I said that. So, yeah, okay. So, all right. Well, we've done this. Now, we have some more things that we can put into units to make them better. Some upgrades, I agree with. Old age, could be. Really can't even complain about being tired, because I woke up naturally about 3.5 hours ago now. So, tell you what I did. Thursday was, Turkey Day. So, I woke up damned early. About 3 a.m. I left about 6 a.m. I drove from my secret mountain base, which is in Arizona, people. You can know that. Drove all the way to California. Got there earlier, because I wasn't, because there can be, accidents and other things. And I've been stuck in a few on some of these really small roads that they've shut them down for a while because of one big truck fire in one instance. But so I didn't know, and I just, gave myself cushion time. So I had a couple extra hours to kill before time to get together. So I went down to the ocean and walked out on the pier. I'll actually post a couple of photos. I haven't gotten them out of my phone that I took from the pier that I went out on. So I went to the beach, not swimming or anything, but just went to the beach, walked out on the pier. Very near where I used to live, or nearish where I used to live, or whatever. But walked out on the pier and saw fish and animals and whatnot. And so then I went and had an extended dinner. We played a board game and whatnot. And then I was feeling a bit tired, but not terrible. But I sort of already knew. So I started to drive home. I drove about a third of the way home. And I sort of planned this because I was driving my dad's van that I'm still using at times. And I had a bed set up in back of it. So at one of these travel centers, which, relatively cheap gas. Well, I didn't get any. I'd already filled up. And, you sort of, grand version of a, roadside market kind of thing and whatnot. So I pulled in there and I got about 4 hours of sleep in the back of that. And then I drove the rest of the way across the desert, and I saw the dawn come up sort of in my eyes. It caused me a little bit of problems. And then got home, and then I was home for about 2 hours, and I slept for about 7 hours. I woke up, and then I slept for about another 7 hours after a while. So I was tired, but that's was sort of in the past. And you spoke it perfectly, Sinterklaas. Well done, old man. Yes, you might have some Dutch blood in you after all. No, not very likely. The game. So, listen, folks. Mostly, not entirely, but mostly I play the game. And by that I mean, and obviously in the computer, unless you somehow cheat, use cheat codes or something like that, you're playing the game, which may or may not, and I've talked about some of this stuff, like, they definitely use these gibbons. But and I'll tell you what these are. These are wicker baskets, basically, or I guess that's what you call them, or just otherwise could be made out of branches from trees that are sort of woven together. And so they're relatively light. Now, you wouldn't want to necessarily, like in this game, march around all day carrying one, but they're relatively light, meaning you can more or less readily pick one up. A relatively fit male can pick one up and move one around. So you would, either in your building of defenses, or you're like getting, you're besieging a fortification of some sort. And a lot of either times they'd be digging trenches, using these types of tools. And so you would dig the trenches, but you get these things, and you would take them out often in areas where you're going to start digging, because as you're moving up towards the enemy, as you're getting closer and closer, for besieged work, really good book called Fire and Stone by Christopher Duffy that really does the 18th century. And I just got his, haven't read it yet, but I just got a week or two ago, his book on 17th century siege warfare as well. Christopher Duffy's a great author. So I've read about this in some detail. And so, as you're getting close, well, when you start digging out there, you often dig at night, of course, but you're exposed. So they take these round baskets, and they stick them in a line, and then they very rapidly try to fill them with either rocks and or earth, so that they'll absorb fire. Now, if you shoot, and there could be multiple layers thick, and you couldn't readily put one on top of another. And so if you're shooting like a light cannon or canister or grape shot at them, one basket may, and it can depend on us, there's rocks and whatever, and just their size can vary, whatnot, may stop one of those rounds in. But if you're shooting like a 6 or 8 pounder or whatever like that, it's probably just going to go right through these. Any one of them. So you can make them, multiple baskets deep, but you can quickly fill them up and then take the time to dig the trench behind them, and maybe even bury the gibbons in more earth as you're moving along. So it's a, use that way. And then also, if you're like building a defensive outworks around you're not Verbund's star forts and that kind of stuff. I'm sure there's a few still in the Netherlands that cities are built in or around, and I know there's some in Belgium that are built that way. Those things, you might crown the tops of some of those fortresses, once you're starting to be besieged, but as just sort of an absorption thing, absorb some of, especially fragmentation, when you're hitting the stone walls and the fragments start flying, they sort of absorb some of that. But often they would, whether out in the field, like Washington did when he put some of his defenses for Long Island and other things, that you expect the enemy to come, and so you dig in your artillery mostly. And so you would use that, but not in this sort of field maneuver kind of thing. It wouldn't be around too much. So, well, we don't want to use a horsey unit, but we have some of these units that we can, for $50, we could open up another slot. Now, you get more expensive as you go along. That's 100. So, that's horses. Again, those are horses. See, I some of this stuff I like as upgrades. You know, maybe better cartridge boxes or some things, but I don't know. Iron ramrods. Okay, we'll give you those. We may, because now, see, that has a cannon and a head there. So it's for either artillery or infantry. This has a horseshoe or the head, so that's for cavalry or, again, infantry. Some of these can be used for everybody. Some can be used for just one type. Okay, so we also got tampions. Now, tampions, again, I don't know how the hell they're supposed to affect things in combat. They're just to put into the end of your musket, and often they would be slightly loose for your musket caliber, and you would use a small cloth that was often oiled that you would put over the end, and then you would put the tampion in it, and the cloth would work as the seal and keep it from rattling or falling out or whatever. So so it would look like that, but just picture a little bit of cloth hanging out around the edges, as I've often seen that. And that keeps water, moisture from going into your musket, both loaded as well as unloaded. So if it's loaded, you don't want to have water coming in and spoiling your powder, but also when it's unloaded, you just don't want water in your barrel to, rust, kind of thing. So that helps our accuracy. Well, I guess if you're properly storing your muskets, or handling them when you're not. Freikorps infantry. Yeah. Now these guys. Well, okay. Well, the other thing is we have well, they already have canteens, so we'll give these guys greater accuracy when they're skirmishing. So that should be good. These guys here, they got great coats, cross pendants for morale, and some beer for morale. So we'll spend the 50 and we'll give them oh, there we go. We've improved our forces. We've re-equipped. Okay, so we're doing pretty good. So we'll leave camp here. See what these slums. Your Grace, the moment our men stepped into the shanty, the ground gave way to fire, and the entire quarter has been laid as a trap. Great blast tore through the building. Several of our soldiers were lost at once. Amid the smoke, we could still hear the cries of those burned beneath the wreckage, among them a senior officer and a number of his men. We may cut our losses and withdraw, or dispatch a rescue party in hopes of pulling them free. Okay, we're going to send a large rescue party. So that was that. The Grace, the working parties went in at once with ropes and axes. The fires were beaten down. Joyce propped and the wreckage cut through by hand. After hard labor, the officer was drawn out alive with most of his men bruised and burned, but breathing. Few were lost where the beams had fallen. The surgeon is at work. Okay, so we rescue officer, 5% attrition trap. So that hurt our reserves. We have a friendly market here. Oh, okay, and we have over here cattle farms for more provisions, or iron mines for artillery recruitable. We're going to use up some of our money to try to recruit more artillery, unfortunately. So let's come over here. Okay, so we'll grab some provisions. We'll also try to grab some replacements here. Good there for the moment. All right. Here. Okay, so we have that garrison. We get our outpost. What's it over there? Basically, we're using the battles and whatnot and some of these encounters to strengthen our forces to be ready for the main big thrust that we'll have to face coming. The garrison is plagued by disorder. Men are idle. The drills are slack. Their officers show little initiative. The commandant has requested assistance to restore order. You can send him our reserve officer. We'll lose $60,000 in that. We don't have to do these because we've secured enough outposts, so maybe I shouldn't be. Or we could send him a quartermaster. That needs a lot more reservists. So, and I have enough, but I don't really want to give up too many of those. I guess we'll give up. Okay, new unit received. So we got another cavalry unit. These guys. I think it's these guys, but that was where the open slot was. So, oh yeah, we can tell. Because, well, these both have worn sabers. So we have cuirassier swords, so we'll give them to these guys. Don't know if we want to give them breastplates. Regimental staff quartermaster, veterancy gain, morale -4 though. Okay, I guess that's sort of kind of it. Well, let's zoom out here. There's an encampment over there. Let's head towards that encampment. Okay, we came upon a small but well-appointed camp set apart from the woods and kept in good order. It belongs to a displaced officer, his home overrun and his command shattered. He claims to be without position but not without talent. We have men in need of command. He may be persuaded to join us, paid commission. Okay, unlikely. Persuade him to join us. Spend $100, which I think is actually sort of cheap, and hire him. All right. We have this guy now. Some other slums. Some battlefields over there. Let's debase currency sale costs more. Okay, well. Let's head here and get some food. Hoping to run into some more of the enemy patrols. Ah, we have. Ooh, 2 of them. Let's go first after this one. Oh God, who thought up of this name? Umekelmunde? Umekelmunde? I don't know. God. Damn people. Don't you guys know how to speak? As opposed to just making guttural noises? Ah. Bloody Germans. All right. Let's see how we want to deploy. What does the terrain look like? We have a pond in front of us, so we'll probably go around the pond instead of through the pond. All right, let's see. How is the enemy deploying itself? Basically like last time. Okay. Hill over here. Hey IKB, how you doing? And we have a river over here. So, well, good. Good. Rolling along, that's good. So, I'm going to try to avoid both sets of water here. Everything's still on track, yeah. Good ones, both of you. For those who don't know, IKB is a railway enthusiast. And we have a few people here on Twitch and YouTube, not many, but a few. And a few more will watch some or all of this in, later on. I just enjoy talking with people, talking about these things, so I still do this. Not that I think I'm going to be some great success, but or anything like that, just having fun. And your boss remembers to do his job. Okay, well, is that just supposed to be a joke, or is you have problems with your boss? I don't know how to take that so much, but yeah. I still think, some of my content's gotten a lot of views. Some of it's gotten just some. What I'm actually very proud of, and I know it's a little off topic. It's still historical and all of that, but somewhat off topic from the overall channels. But some of our playing together, IKB and I playing Railway Empire together. I still think are some of our best episodes of the interaction between us. It's not like it's so tremendously funny or anything, and not like, I hope it's not boring, but we're talking about railways, industry, and the development of society and all that stuff. So, both. Okay. Uh-oh. 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 And so, I really enjoyed making those episodes, and I think they're actually really good. Okay, we'll move these guys to the stand of trees. So he is derailed, yes. And for those who don't know, IKB stands for, well, you're very welcome, Isambard Kingdom Brunel, who was one of the great, don't know if the greatest, British industrialists, maybe. I just don't know the whole panoply of British industrialists to know for sure if he was the greatest, but between shipbuilding, bridge building, railway building, I'm sure factories and more than I know. I know I've seen at least one documentary on him, but I don't remember all the details. And so he is a tremendous person in the development of Western civilization and modern industry, because basically, as I see it, the modern industry, and I would say it's parallel development. I mean, they were not parallel as in separate, but going along really at the same time, is the U.S. and Britain. We were both doing it. I'm sure that there's a few firsts for Britain, and there's a few firsts, maybe more for Britain, but and a few firsts for America during industrial development. One I can say is not what he's known for. This is different than IKB. Not what he's known for mostly, but one of the greatest, or one of the great industrialists and great scammers in history is Samuel Colt. He also developed the sort of modern revolver too. But Samuel Colt's big thing, which obviously way predates Henry Ford, but is in making replaceable parts. So every part of every gun was exactly the same from gun to gun. So before him, and for places like Britain for many years still, World War II, you would have to, you got to fit this part to this gun. So that's why they had like serial numbers all over everything. So you know that this part fits for that gun, and if it broke, you have to go to an armor, and he'd have to fit. That's why British tank or military repair people are called fitters, because they had to fit parts. Because even in World War II, they were doing that heavily, and a British fitter, that kind of guy, mechanic, went into an American repair shop and quickly noticed one thing was missing that the Americans did not have in their repair shops that all the British ones did, their mechanic repair shop. A vise. The Americans didn't need a vise. They just, this part, it's broken. Okay, what we do is we take it over here and set it in the broken bin. We go get a new one, and we just put it on the truck. Where Britain, it almost fits. Let's go file on it a bit. Oh, that's closer. Let's file on a little bit. When they're filing it, they're putting it in the vise. That's why they're still called fitters. Because up and through World War II, they were still hand-fitting their vehicles and other things, guns, Enfields, and whatnot, together. But Samuel Colt is the first one on any scale made, and he was obviously working with firearms, made it so that the tolerances were not maybe later German type tolerances, but the tolerances and manufacturing, it didn't matter. If every little piece of that gun, each individual piece, is exactly the same as every other piece and every other gun of that type that he's making. So you could disassemble 6 guns after they're from the factory line, stir up all the pieces and put them all right back together, and they would all work as equally as well and work well. So, so some of the firsts are definitely American, but there's also a lot of British first in industry, and industry is a modern, or a very much a part of Western civilization. And it started, actually, and then of course fell back. It started under the Roman Empire. They definitely had industry there, as in large industrial developments. More so than anything I've ever read about China, which is another major civilization that was well developed. to a degree they had it, but not like Rome did. But obviously there was a big backslide when you get to the Dark Ages, and it should still be called the Dark Ages. That's the proper term for it for many, many reasons. But so Western civilization gives modern industrial capacity to the world now, and to be a modern country. Basically, I mean, obviously you could form, the country of Iceland that we just live up in, or some Pacific island nation or something that just so few people, but any real nation, not just some little independent something around the world, to be a modern nation, you need to have an industry. You need to be industrious. If you're not doing that. And again, like Liechtenstein, I don't know if they have any sort of industry locally. Now, they at least used to, and I don't know if Luxembourg still does. It did have a steel industry before in World War II. Even though little small Luxembourg had that. And so there's non-Western nations like China, like Taiwan, like South Korea, like, Japan, that are modern industrious nations that are not Western. They are modern nations, though. And they have Western influences, obviously one of them being industry. So, yes, IKB, Isambard Kingdom Brunel, was one of the major people building industry. And basically after, to the best of my knowledge, I mean, sure, particularly the Germans did developments, but Germany, France, Belgium, the Netherlands were definitely lagging behind the first tier of U.S. and Britain developments, but we're coming along progressively. And places like Portugal, Spain, Italy were very late to industrialization, very late. So, which have affected their culture and their development and why they, were what they were. In, at best, second-tier countries in the world compared to, France. Because, France and Germany, yeah, they were behind Britain, and, Germany, of course, unites under Bismarck, but we're behind Britain and the U.S., but they were still sort of there and developing. As opposed, because, I'm thinking about all this, both with Spain and Italy particularly, and is why particularly Italy is fascist, and there was the great tug of war between, there was a tug of war early on, and before Mussolini gets into power, between communist socialists on one side and once Mussolini creates the fascist party, right around 1920 or so. You have that, and then, of course, you have in Spain in their civil war, is it going to be communist, anarchist, or socialist, or is it going to be monarchist, nationalist, which is sort of around in those areas, or fascists? On that, because, and the reason those two countries do that is because they're going through a rapid transition. You're going from an agrarian country with very limited industry, and an agrarian country that is primarily, overwhelmingly muscle-powered, whether animal or human, to trying to develop very rapidly into a modern industrialized world, where, and how far are they now? Probably most of Western Europe is 100%. Unless it's a hobby, not using muscle power. They're using, they're driving trucks. They have tractors, not that people don't lift and move things, but it's not based on huge amounts of human labor. But, so, in both of those countries in 1920, and still in other parts of Europe too, like Denmark and whatnot, I remember one of my professors, Dr. So, in the 70s and whatnot, people were still using, farmers using animal power to draw, pull a wagon to market. in the 70s, and that would be unheard of in America as outside of a hobby thing. Oh yeah, we have a few horses or mules, and they're just sort of fun to have around, and we use them a bit. But we also have this big tractor over here and a couple of pickup trucks, and kind of thing. No, as like having small farms that can't afford trucks and lots of machinery. Not that they didn't have any, but that's in the 1970s, and still so in Italy and Spain, you have countries that are still primarily muscle-powered farming that are trying to industrialize. So there's a radical shift, and when you do that, you go, oh, hey, yeah, all these little tenant farmers working their small plots, like in Spain, bye-bye, we don't need you, bye-bye. We want to clear out big fields and have a tractor, because I've seen some of these like steam-powered tractors that were still being used in America in the 20s. But they might have one of these things. There's a video of them sort of using in the 2000s post, just as a hobby. This big old tractor, this big steam tractor, is pulling this sort of wedge thing behind them that goes off to one side, and there's like somewhere between 10 and 20 men standing on it. I don't quite know the number, but I'm pretty sure it's more than 10. Maybe just 12 or 13 or some number. I don't know. And each of them has a plow in their hand that's mechanically attached to this wedge so that they sort of keep it stuck in the ground. So it's still using however many people to drive the tractor, which is, yes, somebody sitting in behind the wheel, but also somebody shoveling coal in it, and then a bunch of these other men. But the amount of field that they could, and well, it takes a big open fields to use this big device. The amount of field to all that people that nowadays just one person sitting behind a tractor could do, and do quicker and faster and cheaper still. But so that amount, that's still a lot of manpower. But compare and how much you would get planted or plowed or whatever, because you could also put seed dispensing machines and other things as they were developing behind these still fairly labor intensive tractors. But the amount of fields you could sow or plow or whatever, or later harvest, means you only need 20%, 25%, maybe 30% of your original manpower. So bye-bye to everybody else. We don't need you. And at the same time, they're trying to ramp up industrial production, building these tractors. And it's not like not every former farmer gets to immediately walk into a factory job in a town, which wouldn't necessarily even have living space for them at a time. So you're going to have this period of time of massive disruption, to the point of people possibly starving because they don't have food, to lack of housing, to just their way of life changing, just even those that are able to go in and get, jobs in the city that are whatever they may be, industrialization or delivering milk to, people's homes or whatever. It's going to be a disruption. And so people look for radical solutions, communism, fascism, whatever, to solve this problem. So that's why particularly Spain and Italy go fascist. Now Germany goes National Socialist. That's more due to, post-World War I conditions. So, that's a different sort of reason why they did. And that's also the reason why Russia goes, Bolshevik, Soviet Union and all that, is because they're going through a similar societal disruption. That for everything we know, the czars were handling that pretty well and probably would have succeeded in staying in power had it not been for disastrous World War I for them. They probably would have been okay in their transition because of their authoritarian government was still damn strong and still working out pretty damn well. It's just the World War I pushed it over too much. Now, see, if we go back to the 18th century, And again, for viewers here, for me, the 18th century starts in 1688, and it ends in, or 1689. You can sort of either of those 2 years, and it ends in 1788 or 1789. That's the 18th century for me. Is the Williamite conquest in Britain to the French Revolution. That's the 18th century. So mostly within that, almost exclusively, you don't have political ideologies fighting each other. And you go, oh, the American Revolution. Well, it's more of a war of independence. And if you look at it, there were a fair number of royalists on the American Revolutionary side. People that might want to make George Washington, King Washington, not to be an absolute, Napoleonic type dictator, but make him sort of a monarch like George III, and that having lots of power, but having him, and then maybe other people, however they would choose it, to be your sort of chief executive, as opposed to whether heredity or elected by the Senate for life or whatever. There was definite real thoughts on that. Not the majority of people. I mean, the loyalists that were kicked out, they had those thoughts too. But it was more of a local control situation, and they established a government that was a representative government that at first, I think not sure if most, but a lot of the senators were not elected by the people. They were elected by the state legislatures. The basically it was a popular election for the presidency, but not entirely. Sort of regional election for presidency, somewhat based on population. And then only the House of Representatives was separated by actual size of population, as opposed to the states were just large state, small state. You got 2 senators. How do you choose them? Mostly just the legislature, one fashion or another, would elect their senators. So it was still not trying some radical solution. It was just trying a bit more self-governance with a bit more bit more representative, bit more accountable to its people, mirror of the British government. Really, it was. It wasn't some, Britain's all wrong, we need to go, some sort of radical solution, And our aristocracy was real, and to a point still is real. But it's not based on bloodlines in the sense of you get some title or you get something like that. It's more meant to be a meritocratic aristocracy, if you will. Those that do well become the aristocrats kind of thing for their lifetime, if you will. And maybe, of course, help their children along the path, but anybody could join it. You didn't have to get some king's or somebody else's permission. Just do well, develop things, you get to become an aristocrat, if you will. So yeah. But in the 18th century, you're fighting over 2 main things. One of them is territorial control. There was very little, and I can find some, but very little of trying to displace the current population of an area with a new population. The idea of Poles wanting to take over Hungarian land and driving all the Hungarians out and moving Poles in, is more like, we're just adding more territory to our area, and if the local elites are disloyal, they're going to go bye-bye, and we may put in our elites over the local population, but the local population more or less gets to stay as it is. Like I say, I could get into some displacement, but not a lot. So it's either fighting over territorial control or over religion. Those are the 2, and obviously that's Protestantism versus Catholicism. And I'm not talking about wars, around the world. I'm talking within Europe. So it was, Is Prussia, you know, what's the size of Prussia going to be? What's the size of the Habsburg Empire going to be? What's the size of the, you know, French Empire going to be? And, you know, how much territory is Savoy going to have, or Naples is going to have, you know, and versus its neighbors, or who's going to be the king of Naples? You know, there'd be one royal family versus another royal family, and eventually, or pretty quickly, it becomes the Bourbons, the royal family of France. See, I know all this stuff. I'm sure you're all bored and half the people have already left, but I hope it was interesting to those who remained. I like talking about this. Okay, so I think this is going to be our deployment. So let's pause this. We're going to move our infantry. Oh, use my arrow keys. I don't know. I haven't reset. I could reset the... You're going to come right up here into the trees and hopefully shoot out of the trees and kill more than you get killed. You guys think we're going to move a little bit more like that? See that well enough though. Let's try this again. No, I'm changing my mind. Now's the time to change your mind, not once you're starting to march around. Okay, let's to the edge. We're going to have one unit here, sort of facing those guys. These guys, they're going to move up here. They're moving up there. They're moving to there. They're going to move to here. I want to get them out and up over to here as much as I can so they're not all shot up just by being there, because the infantry will come in and you'll have either the choice of charging frontally into them, or just being shot up more and more. Okay, they're moving to there. These guys here. We're going to move up something like this. I know I've often put them out on the flank, but I think that the other unit, but sort of Gibbon equipped unit, but we have two of them now. These guys are going to come up more over here to get on the heights, somewhat on top of the hill over here. These guys are just going to move out on the flanks and hopefully flank it to the enemy rear. Okay, that looks good. Let's start going. I like to get these lines moving out before I move up my command HQ, just because otherwise they'll move faster and disrupt the movement a bit more. Yeah, these guys are moving through the river a bit more. I don't know how much that's slowing them up, but not good. These guys have made it to their point. So I didn't want to move them too much through the river. Not that their powder really gets wet or can't be used or something, but anything like that. I don't think it has a continuous... I think it disrupts them while they're in it, but I don't think it disrupts them after it. we doing over here? Wish this game had waypoints. You know, you could not just say go forward to here. You go, or you know, send them on a path. Just keep moving. There. Waited too long. Oh, waited longer than I should have for moving these guys up, but we'll move them up now. They'll be okay. They'll get there in time. Okay. And these guys out over here. Two units close together so they don't get taken out singly like they did last time. Here. Hey, let's see if they come into my trap. Horns of the buffalo. Perfect canne. Can either of you say where those are from? Mm-hmm. Okay. You guys. It's this way. Okay, there. One of their Cossack units is moving. Come on. Let me pause this. I don't want to check. Still be here, but tabbing out. Okay, good. So far, so good here over some other thing. All right, let's continue. So these guys, With their firepower overlapping, not that much overlapping, a little bit right in here. So we're going to click on these guys here, and they're going to move up something like that. We're going to move here and these guys to here. I'm not sure whether I want to try to go this way around the forest or that way around the forest for them. These guys have moved up a bit more. We're going to move these guys to here. Face this way. And these guys hang back just a little bit, but up here. I do think they open fire a little too far out, but whatever. These guys don't know what they're doing, how they're reacting to being flanked. Okay, well this time the enemy has decided to move their cavalry against this wing, which is a slightly, well, I don't know if weaker, but fewer unit wing. These guys at their carbines will get a nice volley off. They've just done, and now they're going to charge. And these guys are also going to charge. Keep these guys sitting here right here for the moment. Now they're getting fire from 2 units. I think we will go up around this way. Okay, they have shattered. Now, I want you to do is, I'm not full enough or something. I don't. Reform up here, guys. Reform. They're shooting there a bit. These guys are going to charge in on their flank. They're retreating, not shattering, but they're retreating. Okay. Oh. These guys have turned to face us, so we're going to make sure they don't get chances to shoot at us. And we'll keep pressure on them here. We're going to move these guys to here. That way. These guys. See if they continue to pursue us. Land for them if they do. These guys are retreating. So, you guys are going to, yes, continue to move, continue to move. These guys are going to move up to move on the flanks of these guys, and these guys are going to move up to here. lots of them as well. Oh, got a bot over on Twitch. Wait. I don't know who really thinks. Well, I don't know if you get away with it. I guess bot views would move you up on the viewer rankings to be on the first page for a game. So I guess it does sort of still help, maybe. Okay, they just got shattered. Okay, pause. I want to see what's going on up here. Okay, these guys are coming into these guys. Let's do that. Let's continue to move across here, and you guys continue to move across there. This is not the best attack. I think we will win, but it's just not the best. Okay, yeah, they're retreating again, and maybe even gonna break. Didn't shatter, right? These guys here, what are they doing? They're still moving, so what we're gonna do here is we're gonna take them in the flank here. Hopefully before they get a chance to fire at anything. Okay, these guys probably just very ineffectually fired, but we see them reshaping, moving around, so you guys come here, and you guys come here as well. Even before they can form up, and they're starting to discharge, but most of them are still very good. Arno, thank you. Arno is a great moderator, and we win. Okay, so we got them. We get some more Thalers to be able to. See if I got some booty. And okay. Visions and veteran sequine conscripts. Still doing pretty good for that. And money or ammunition. I think we're gonna go with vision. Now let's see, what do we want to do here? Okay, some of our newer raised units are newer units to us. These Dragoon swords. Holsteiner horses, which morale and speed are improved. Okay, so we'll give them to these guys. They'll move around faster. I don't know that I want to give them cuirassiers. Movement speed down a little bit. We're up 4. This would bring us down 2, but stamina, so we can, when we're riding all around the whole map, we can get back there a little quick, or not be tired out from it, or from other things. And I think we want to give something to some of these other. No, I think we'll concentrate here. We give them blanket rolls, which cavalry units definitely had, so less attrition, less damage, I guess. I'm not sure why. But yes, and basic uniforms we can turn into cash. Some other stuff, okay. Got those on. I'm going to see about iron 3-pound guns or iron 6-pound howitzers. Okay, so let's issue out ammunition. Combat, we're going to get ready to go right into another group here. These guys. These guys actually outnumber us by a little bit. Okay. I got it. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, if there's any ladies here. I'm sure there are a few gentlemen, but I just won an auction on Gunbroker. Yay. Is it a gun? Not exactly. Is it gun related? Absolutely. Have any of you, I'm not sure if this is sort of obscure, sort of in the past, have any of you heard of a Sten gun before? Let's hear from the audience. Have any of you heard from a Sten gun before? Ever heard, know what it is, have an idea of what a Sten gun is? Give you guys time to answer if anybody knows. Come on, some of you got to know what a Sten gun is. Yes. IKB saying yes. I don't know if our Dutch guy knows what a Sten gun is. Without Googling it. S-T-E-N. Sten. British submachine gun. Absolutely, Arno. And I trust the yes from IKB is that. Well, I have a few parts kits for Sten guns that are either complete or near complete, and the main thing that is missing in some cases, or not completed, is the main tube of the Sten gun, because obviously it's a tube gun, it has a tube there. I bought a few of the kits, and one of them has the paper's been, and you can get another one and print it out. The paper has been glued to the tube to show where you need to cut, drill and cut out pieces so that it works, right? And then you can put it together to have it working. But to do that in the United States is illegal, because machine guns are illegal unless you get a tax stamp for them. Well, and you can't make new ones currently without legally making new ones. So that makes machine guns very expensive, because you can't make, for the general public, make and transfer new ones. So I've got some of these kits. I am hopeful that we'll see in my lifetime, and hopefully in this current president's term, an amnesty period in which I could register some of these kits as guns and build them out. But what I just got was a very partial kit. Very partial. It has a barrel, it has a trigger group, it has a stock, it has sort of where the mag well is, but just the barrel, not the, I don't know if it has the trunnion in where you screw it in, and it has a bolt. We used it in the resistance, absolutely, during World War II, in all Dutch units called the Princess Irene Brigade. Right, and so now the ATF makes rules up, as opposed to just going by the legal words. And we can talk about whether the NFA, then, 1934 NFA, National Firearms Act, whether that's constitutional or not. But it's the law of the land. Okay, so it is the law of the land. And it says you can't have, machine guns without registering them and getting, paying a tax stamp and registering them and all that stuff. It was later on in 86 that they banned new ones, but that's a different thing. Well, it just says you can't have machine guns. And it's defined as shooting more than one bullet with one trigger pull. Now, the NFA, or the ATF, has made the rule, which, again, they're making rules up, is saying that if a gun is too easily convertible to full auto, you can't do it. Okay, so if it's too easy to convert, you can't have it. Even though it's only semi-automatic, if it's too easy to convert, you can't do it. So basically what it means is all open bolt guns come under this category as too easy to convert. And an open bolt gun is partially done for simplification, partially done for dealing with heat in a machine gun. is that to shoot it, you cock the gun back and the bolt stays open. And the bolt has the firing pin fixed, often just milled, right onto the bolt. And so when you pull the trigger, the whole bolt slams forward and fires. And then it does the recoil. Now, if you take your finger off the trigger before next round happens, or if it's just a semi-auto one or whatever, it'll lock open, ready to go again. So they say open bolt gun designs are not allowed. That's why, which I also have a pistol. I also have a shoulder stock for it, but a pistol that was made by, GSG in modern Germany. That's a copy of the MP40, somewhat. I mean, it looks like an MP40. It has a lot of the same internals as an MP40, but it's not the same. Because it's designed and put together as a closed bolt gun. Meaning, after you fire it once, it goes back and cycles in the next round and slams home, but doesn't fire the round. There's a floating firing pin that a hammer will come up and hit. Okay, and that's a closed bolt gun, which is fine for semi-auto, and actually better, just generally speaking, better for accuracy, because when you fire a closed bolt gun, the first thing, before it even goes off, you get this thunk, this sort of pull forward, which will generally bring your barrel down with the first bullet. Now, that can be sort of good because you tend to rise up as you fire full auto. So if you're just talking like a 3-4 round burst, okay, your first shot's going to be a little low, maybe sort of right where you're aiming, the second shot and the third and the fourth, depending on, type and recoil, how easy it is to control, and how fast it's going, bit high. So it sort of makes up for it, especially, and machine guns, tripod mounted, it's just better to do an open bolt because they generate so much heat. And because they're so heavy, because they're on a heavy tripod, being an open bolt really doesn't, in the reality of things, because we're not talking sniper rifles, in the reality of things doesn't affect its hit performance. But on submachine guns, and definitely on something like an assault rifle, it can have a negative impact on especially if you're firing it semi-auto, because you just want to shoot one round at a time. It'll make you throw off your aim and generally down. So there is very good reason for closed bolt guns being better in very many instances, and mostly when you're talking semi-auto guns, and obviously things like bolt action or lever action, closed bolt, or those don't generate enough heat to really be a problem having them closed bolt. I know this is getting all around, but what this kit included, and it looks like the trigger group is, I don't know how much modified for this. That's, the sort of the lower part of it that includes the trigger, but also the internal mechanisms from looking at it. And it came with a closed bolt Sten bolt. Meaning it has, and I've looked at the photos and it looks like, it's there, the firing pin is there. I presume there's a little spring inside of there or something. So this is a closed bolt for a Sten gun, and I think the trigger group's there. And now with all my other parts, and also came with a barrel, which is very useful, and this sort of T-shaped metal stock, though I sort of like the loop stock better. I also recently got from a Sten Mark V a wooden stock, including the metal butt plate for it, which I may, and it's really easy to swap stocks on these guns. Well, now that starting January 1st, the tax stamp for a short-barreled rifle has gone to $0 instead of $200. So I can register one of these as a short-barreled rifle instead of having a ridiculously long barrel on it. I can have a traditional Sten gun. So I'm going to, sometime next year, I know somebody who can build these things in town, as a business. And they'll do it. And we're all talking purely legal, purely registered. And not that I couldn't build it, but it'd take a lot of work for me to do it. I don't have I have enough of the setup to do it, just from my dad inheriting it, but I'm just not that good at it, and be a lot of learning experience. Now, Sten gun might be the gun to learn on, but probably have them do it. We'll see what they charge. To create a closed bolt, semi-auto, not full auto, not machine gun, semi-auto Sten gun. So hopefully sometime next year, I will have a closed bolt Sten gun. And being closed bolt and semi-auto, you just make sure that there's a, when you push it from, safe to fire, it's just purely goes into semi-auto, not to full. Meaning that there is a, the sear will catch the round and make sure you need to reset the trigger. So yeah, so I just got, for a very good price, I think, a closed bolt and a trigger group and a few other useful bits to making a Sten gun. So hopefully sometime next year I will have a Sten gun. And if you come out and visit me, IKB or Arno sometime, you can shoot a Sten gun, semi-auto. That will be something I will have. And I'm also going to get a stock put on my MP40, which I got the stock. It's just registered as a pistol because I didn't want stupid long barrel. So I'll get that done up too. Got some other projects. They're going to be okay. Arno says, I do love how the Sten gun looks. It's an awesome design. Yes, it's not very. It's a cool looking gun. It's a very crude gun, and it's just okay. And Arno's asking what IKB's thoughts on the Sten gun. Anyone with basic machine shop knowledge could build a working Sten open bolt gun from a tube, a spring, and a hunk of steel for a bolt. Absolutely, IKB. Yeah, because of my past, which some of you know parts of it, none of you know all of it. Because of my past, trust me, the ATF knows who I am. I'm not saying that there's anybody still at the ATF from way back in the day that ever met me. I mean, trust me, I've met ATF people in the past in my previous various lines of work, including other government people. Trust me. So I don't know if anybody around would recognize my name in that sense. But the ATF computers, because of some of my licensing in the past, and not just being a YouTuber, which does give me greater profile, but they know who I am. Trust me, they know, as just a name on a screen and whatever, and in their computers, they know who I am. So I have a spotlight on me. So I am not going to be breaking the law in trying to make a machine gun, even though I have all the parts. I have the tube. I can have it, whether I can weld it together and learn how to, learn as in I sort of know how to do it. I used to work with my dad as a kid a little bit, but, do it well, do it right, practice it. Yeah, I could put together my kits as machine guns and or, make a crude bolts and other, a barrel that's just a tube without any rifling. You can just get that just at the right size, and just a few other things to just sort of, be a bullet hose, even cruder than a standard Sten. So, oh yeah, I could do it. It's just that I don't want to break the laws is why I'm not going to do it. But yeah, it is not a thing that is a physical limitation for me. It's a purely illegal one, and I want to do it right, legally. And so I will with this here, and it didn't come with the mainspring, the recoil spring or anything else, but I got some of those for these other parts kits. So I should have enough, I think. I hope the trigger group is set up to be semi-auto only here. Or I'm sure between looking at diagrams of their eye or again, this one small business, just 2 or 3 people working in it, but they're well equipped, could make the parts to make it semi-auto only. So I'll get a semi-auto. And I'm planning a new channel. I know a few of you are just the regulars. There's a few people watching on both services here, but I'm going to do a new channel, probably starting in the next year, which you'll get to see my face, and I'll probably identify myself because I'm now at my secret mountain base. I am no longer living in enemy territory, so I'm a little less worried about showing who I am. I was definitely worried about showing it and becoming a target for the left. The 15 minutes of hate or whatever that A Brave New World talked about. Who to attack, and if you're even unless you have big deep pockets. No, I'm going to move these guys over here. This Gibbon base unit. in the old territory, just some sort of, anti-feminist male chauvinist pig, whatever, anti-communist guy that I am, that I might. Brave New World is the other one. Well, there's the other one. Well, there's was it 15 Minutes of Hate in 1984? I don't remember enough. Yeah, Brave New World is what, Arthur Huxley, I think. Man, I should know these things better. They're all seeming to be coming true in one degree or another in one Western country or another, like Britain. Right now, I think Arno is freer in the Netherlands than IKB is in Britain right now. Freer to say publicly, like as in online or whatever. And I'm not even talking hate, what they would call it hate speech, but not what I would call hate speech. Just 5 minutes of hate. Okay, 5 minutes of hate. Okay, so yeah, so so it's I think Arno is freer there, here than, or in the Netherlands than IKB is in Britain. Yes, I'm outing you guys, but you've both been around enough that I think it's generally known, if anybody paid any attention, what country you're from, but I won't give out your address, even though I know one of your addresses. So I won't dox you any more than that. But what country you're coming from. So I will be much, much safer where I'm going to be here. Okay, so you know what I'm going to do here is, I don't know what to do. See, I don't know how far forward I'm going to be able to get. Should I try for up here? Can we get to these hills? Yeah, maybe we can. So, yeah, I'm going to try for that. Okay, now these guys, we're just going to set them over here. They're going to have to cross through the stream. These are the cuirassiers. No, we don't want the cuirassiers quite over there. Do it like this. I've actually enjoyed some of her lectures. A woman named Sarah Payne. She's a lecturer or has been a lecturer at the U.S. War College and other things. On military subjects, very much so. And I don't know how well she would get a knowledge on tactics. She's an older woman. But very good at the sort of strategic level. Very good. And one of her main thesis of studies was the Chinese-Soviet relations and whatnot. She does a lot of this stuff. And she's in some of her lectures, the ones I've been watching have all been since the Trump administration, though some of them are a bit, early Trump administration. And she's sort of been talking about, well, it's better to have allies than fight alone or whatever, and we're making our allies so upset now, and firing all the State Department people, blah, 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 and this is just a bad decision. And I won't out who, but somebody who has been around, and a few other people around the channel that I discuss things on Discord with. Very much is of the old opinion of the previous State Department, and that we're doing all this stuff really terribly. Got to go give a friend a lift. We'll return in a few hours. Okay, IKB, if I'm still live, then I'll love to have you back. Good on you for giving a lift to a friend. Has very much bemoaned, like I say, firing a lot of the State Department people and upsetting a lot of the Europeans. Well, I say hooray for what they're doing, because I think a lot of our State Department people are following the wrong strategy. And talking about our European friends, whether they're our friends or not is another debate, but our European allies, what I think we're trying to do is, and I actually agree with it, is doing soft regime change. We are trying to get rid of the current British government, Keir Starmer's Labour Party. We're trying to get rid of Macron's party and the sort of Macronism in France. We're trying to get rid of the Social Democrat / CDU, the conservatives in Germany, and replace those with, a reform in England, with Le Pen's party in France and the AFD in Germany, and similarly in the Netherlands with Kurt Wilders. And we've already successfully, I don't know that we've replaced them, but we've already successfully see Giorgia Meloni, which is following the, if you will, pro-Trump. Not that all of her policies are what Trump's policies was, but it's an anti-immigration, a Europe be strong kind, militarily and economically strong kind of viewpoint. So I'm not saying like Trump's internal policies are the same policies that Giorgia Meloni is pursuing, but they're coming out to be very good allies. And even in Japan with Takaichi, the new first prime minister woman there, yes, it's all the LDP, the Liberal Democratic Party, and which is mostly like 80% of the time the ruling party in Japan. But there's been an internal shift to a Shinzo Abe version versus we're going to, a pro-Biden, we're going to import the third world Japan version, and also a very defensive. I mean, it's not aggressively, going after China, but it's a very militaristic, defensive viewpoint versus, for China and whatnot. So I think we're trying to do regime change in these countries, so that whether it's in Trump's term or if possibly depending on who the next Republican president would be, I do think it's very likely to be a Republican president at this time that will replace Trump. I think we'll get 2 more presidents out of it, then we'll see a Democrat back. Before we even likely see a Democrat back. But, so we're trying this regime change. We're making allies with various political factions. So instead of, invading to liberate Europe from the left now, we're trying to do this sort of soft power regime change. And I know a lot of, I will call them European normies, hate Trump, but a lot of it, I think, is the media lying to them. Especially we see in Sweden, in Norway, in Britain for sure, I think Australia, and maybe Germany, but at least those first 4 countries, that they all slightly differently, but they all re-edited his January 6th speech, where he says, everybody be peaceful, don't be violent, but we're going to march to the Capitol, and they made it sound really bad. They made it out to be a lie, but they put 2 sentences together that were like almost an hour apart stated. Same day, same speech, but they're completely lying to the population. So I think that if a lot of the normies not that they would love Trump, but that they would have a better opinion of him if they weren't lied to so much. Some of it's so blatantly like that, and then others is just commentary lies and whatnot, that would always see there's going to be the radical left out there will always hate the center / right of American politics. But so I think we're trying soft power regime change in Europe. Not trying to break their constitutions or break them down. Oh, and we also, of course, have allies in Hungary, and even though that's sort of a mixed between the president and the parliament, mixed sort of government in Poland, more or less similar allies in Poland under, Donald Tusk or whatever, who had been an EU guy. But so we have our allies in Europe and Japan and whatever. So, yeah, a lot of right-wing parties, yes. And hello, Raichi Sanata, how you doing? Good to have you here. And so, yeah, we're trying to put a different, because, I mean, what fucking stupid idiot, and I do mean fucking stupid idiot, and even if you want to try to say that they're just an ideologue, a smart ideologue wouldn't have done this, because it would have been counterproductive to their ultimate goal. But when you have stupid fucking idiot State Department people putting in gender studies type leftist viewpoints in schools in Afghanistan during our occupation, in there, and teaching that stuff to Afghan children. It's not just women, it's one thing, now it's one thing to go, oh, women get to go to, get primary education, to be able to read and write, or something like that. Okay. But to go in and put in radical left ideology into Afghanistan, which, of course, has spent how many years fighting the Soviets and their radical left ideology into Afghanistan, that basically formed the sort of right-wing extremism of their ideology. And I met some of the, like I said, I've had a bit of a career, won't go into it, but I've met some of the old school Afghan leaders. Not that I knew them, I met them, in person way back when, during the Soviet occupation. And then I've read other things about them, read some of their writings in the past. Now, a lot of these guys are dead. Some of them are dead because the Taliban killed them, not the Soviets. And I knew people that were, and I've never been to Afghanistan, but I knew people that were inside in Afghanistan. One guy spent over a year that I knew. Didn't know him well, but more than just met. And it wasn't like we were friends or anything, but I'd see him periodically. We were friendly to each other, just, that he remembered my name and whatever, that kind of thing. Just casually, just a bit. But I knew some of these people, several people one other guy I'm thinking of also that was in Afghanistan for a while that I knew fairly well. Went and played paintball with him once. So I've known some of these people, and not just at work or whatever, but I've known some of these people that were involved in all of that stuff. And so, those that didn't want the quote-unquote modern Afghanistan under Soviet rule, which a lot of it I would have found reasonable, not quite gender equality, but more modern views on gender than current Afghan views. But to go in and push, modern day extreme American gender theory and other things onto Afghanistan, to these radical conservative, radical Muslim type conservative traditionalist, going back to the Middle Ages stuff, not modern American conservatism or modern European conservatism, but, truly Attila the Hun type conservatism, that are in there. You don't go in and think, oh, we've got just 10 or 20 years, we're going to shove down modern feminist gender theory down their fucking throats. No, you bring them along gradually, because unless you're going to fucking keep your boot on their heel completely, which the Soviets or somebody like Stalin would, or Mao or whoever, but unless you're going to do that, and America was never going to do that. However hard that they pushed, they never were like Stalin or Mao. You're only going to get negative reactions if that's your first program that you're pushing into school for school children in Afghanistan. So even if you're just ideologically sort of blind to some degree, if you were smart, you would realize you're not trying to push this into Western Europe, you're trying to push this into Afghanistan. And you would have taken a much lighter, more progressive, that's why they're progressives as opposed to revolutionaries. Progressives and revolutionaries both basically believe in the same ends, They just want to do different means. One wants to be revolutionary, one wants to be progressive, but they're both getting to the same communist or neo-communist, or however you want to say it, because it may actually look a bit more fascistic, but as opposed to true Marxism or something, but this sort of neo-corporate communist socialist utopia that they're going towards, either whether revolutionary means or progressive means. That's what they want to do. But unless you're going to have their fucking boots on their necks, you're going to have to go, to be successful in a place like Afghanistan, you're going to have to go progressively, because they're just going to have an overwhelming reaction to it. That's partially, I believe, why the Taliban came back in. Partially, they're also just fucking ruthless. So it's their ruthlessness and effectiveness, but it's also partially their, we talk about other reasons too, but is the people who are like, yeah, wasn't so bad. We don't all have to have beards. That's cool. We have a little bit more freedom. Yeah, that's good. Oh shit, you're doing that to my children? You're teaching them this shit to my children? Oh, fucking, the guys that made me wear beards and made me keep my women, 100%, literally like 100% basically covered in cloth, and that they peer through a veil, not even having their eyes shown, but peer through the veil when they leave the house. Okay, well, those guys aren't trying to corrupt they're not giving me the freedom that I want for my girls, their children or something, but, and within the realities of Afghanistan, that you got to still protect them. They're not equal, but not trying to keep them down. Well, at least they weren't trying to, pervert them or whatever. So, kind of thing. So the fucking idiots there that pushed that. And so to get rid of these idiots from the State Department and other people and move to a, no longer try to push queer, trans, whatever in Uganda program or some other crap. We're getting rid of those people from the State Department, and we're shifting our policies. And so we are either blatantly, in many cases, or subtly shifting who the U.S. supports within the political sphere. Now, it's up to, Sweden or Norway is probably not going to become as conservative, however you want to say that, as the U.S. is going to be. U.S. is a lot more religious, a lot more conservative in some ways, much more distrustful of big government, where Norway and Sweden are much more cool with big government and are a lot less religious. Maybe they sort of believe in God, but they haven't gone to church in, however many decades, and except for going in for weddings or funerals or something like that. Meaning that even the church, even the religious people that believe in God are and I'm not trying to proselytize it, I'm just explaining the culture here. Even the believers in God aren't necessarily, routine churchgoers or whatever, where a lot of America is still. Not all of it, not even maybe most of it, but a lot of it is. And you notice I stream on Sunday mornings, so obviously I'm not going on Sunday mornings to church. But, a lot of America is going to be more conservative than Sweden or Norway. But we're trying to move, within reason. I think our current new government policies are trying to move that to the right. Within the Overton window for like Scandinavia or wherever in France or Italy or Spain, we're trying to move it to the right. Not trying to, be a conqueror and, we do have, particularly in Germany, we do have the unacceptable right, the Nazis, that we force them to, and maybe reinvade them if they really start looking like they're going to head towards Nazism again. But, so our, superpower overlord status does put, certain limitations on a country like Germany particularly. But with sort of within that sort of framework, we're very willing to play within the cultural values of the country. We're just trying to move it from moving it more progressively left to moving it more conservatively right within the milieu of the country. So yes, America does, play with, interfering in local politics, in national politics in other countries. So we do that, but it's not, again, it's not like the Soviets were during the Warsaw Pact days, in which, Czechoslovakia, you want a liberal government? No, we're sending in the tanks and we're going to shoot people, or do that in Hungary and we're going to shoot people. We're not doing that. We're not that kind of overlordship. Hey, Turinlo, let's see. Okay, let's read the chat here. But what's the long goal plan for regime change? Just move it more to the right, because particularly with Obama, not Clinton administration, but the Obama administration, and Biden was, whether you want to say 2.0 or 3.0 or whatever, there were a lot of the apparatchiks, the people in the cabinet were Obama type people. They were very much moving things to the progressive left, and progressives are a particular type of political viewpoint. They are, and individual people can be different, but overall, there's revolutionary communists and there's progressive communists. And we're not talking social welfare people, the people that want to have a old age program for retired people that you pay into while you're working, which started under Bismarck in Germany, the first one, I think, of any scale that happened. Or, programs that give either food or money for food or other monies to needy people, but in otherwise a capitalist country. So that's sort of social welfare that can be in that. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about people that the means of production should be owned, people that believe that the means of production should be owned by the people collectively through the state, through the government. Okay. Most socialists want to have large industry or large sectors of the economy that way, meaning things like the medical industry, hospitals and all that kind of stuff, would be government owned. Or like in Britain for a while, the government owned all the car factories under the labor government. Or, all the major industries socialists want to own and highly regulate and tax smaller things, like a local bakery. Even though the local bakery may have 50 employees, because it's like for the city. I'm not talking like a storefront bakery, but a local, company that's baking bread for the, local grocery stores, a small company. Well, that could be privately owned, but we're going to highly regulate you, both on how much you're paying, working conditions, when they get off, highly regulation. That's sort of the socialists believe one of two things. Either that's all it should be, or that's all that the people will accept for the moment, because people haven't progressed far enough. Okay, so the communists believe that all means of production, which could be this microphone sitting in front of me because I'm using it to produce entertainment for people, or a friend of mine, it's been a couple of weeks now. I have several friends that live on top of mountains here. Actually, on the top of mountains. I'm just up in the mountains. They live up on top of mountains where I live. I was visiting, and they had, it's sort of a gasoline-powered trench digger, that you walk behind. Well, even that, under a communist thing, that would be owned collectively by the people. You might have possession of it, but if you weren't properly using it but maybe even not, maybe it's going to be part of the collective farm. But even if it was sort of allowing it to be sort of small scale stuff, that'd still be a means of production. So it would ultimately be owned by the state, but you might have a certain level of property rights, a certain level of possession of it, but you must be using it in the service of the people. Now, that may mean you get paid for it, but you would be regulated on how much you could charge to use your little trench digger. This isn't like to trench like digging like we would think trenches for fighting. Just dig a trench to lay some pipes down under the ground a foot or two kind of thing. It's not a huge thing. But that would be regulated and controlled as to who owns it, meaning you can't have two or three and charge too much to dig people's trenches. No, you would all be regulated. So a communist believes that the means of production should be owned collectively by the people, and the government is who regulates and speaks for the people. And so progressives and revolutionaries, both, and most socialists, both or all of them, believe in the end goal of some form of communism, some sort of communally owned means of production. And this is why, although it might be right-wing, But National Socialism and fascism, to one degree or another, they might allow you property rights for your business, but if you are exploiting things, if you're not, you're going to be highly regulated, as well as we can see, like in National Socialism, you had the Hermann Goering works that were state-owned, and state and the party were at this time were blending into becoming one thing. State-owned massive enterprises as well as privately owned but highly regulated that needed to, oh, if we need you to make tanks, you're making tanks. Or if you're a shoe company, no, you're going to make boots, kind of thing. So it's not, you don't necessarily have the freedom even to what you make, let alone, saying things like just working conditions. You got to be safe, or, what level of safety, or what level of pay, or what the maximum amount of hours you can do. Not just that, but regulating the prices you can sell your goods at is that. So the fascist National Socialist tract is a collectivist viewpoint, and not just, which you might find in some capitalist stuff, trying to keep monopolies, especially something like a railway going in and out of a town, that you only have one railway, instead of like, well, hey, I own the railway and I'm the only one that has property rights along this way. It's going to be super hard for anybody else to get property rights. I can charge whatever I want for my railway. Okay, yeah, at some point now, one small railway between two small towns, who the fuck cares? But, and obviously with trucking and whatnot, in the modern day sense, it's not as critical. But we don't want railway monopolies that even if they're privately owned. So with a well-regulated capitalist society, you're going to keep out the extreme abuses. Now, how far that quote-unquote extreme is another thing. But you keep that out. But you generally have property rights and ownership rights, and so long as you're not polluting too much or being corrupt in too many ways or whatever it is, you get to do what you want. And generally, the government and the population will push you into doing what's good for society, but with still your sort of your rights that you have there. And so progressives and socialists, or progressives and revolutionaries, want this communist ideal. Revolutionaries just want to be like the Bolsheviks and take over and do it now, and we'll remake man. And the progressives believe that man is in the blank slate theory, and I don't believe in the blank slate theory. That we can all be educated to be whatever the state wants you to be. I do not believe in it. I think there's natural, as in biological, imperatives, not just cultural or educated, but imperatives that communism is contrary to the nature of man, so that they are evil in that sense. Now, they believe in blank slate. And the progressives, because they look at the reality of things, think it's going to, and actually think it's not just that we're not ready for it today, but actually think it's best to go the progress route to that socialist or communist utopia, where the revolutionaries, as we see in Mao and we see under Lenin, want to do it now and violently and willing to shoot anyone who really opposes, anyone who sort of is not getting on board with the program will put into camps and re-educate them, and the rest will just, have those that will follow along will do it. So that's sort of the difference between progressive and revolutionaries. And so Hillary Clinton, not her husband Bill Clinton, but and they're different people. Hillary Clinton, at multiple times back in the late 90s, came out and said, I am a progressive. And I forget, named two, including Margaret Sanger, I believe she named, who's a eugenicist, like getting rid of dark-skinned unborn people. But, talked about that she was a progressive, and she's educated enough, and she wasn't just like some person that heard the term and was just going to use it. No, she knows what she's talking about. Hillary Clinton, if you look at, and I haven't, but look at her college education and look around, she knows what a progressive is. And when she self-described her as a progressive, that is, she is a communist who wants to get there through progressive means. So we almost had her as president, and she openly said she's a communist by identifying that she's a progressive, maybe a neo-communist, maybe not trying to replicate what Marx wrote, but, a modified version on all that. Lenin is different than Marx, and Maoists are different than Lenin or Marxist, but they're all sort of, fruit of the same tree, if you will. So she identified herself, liberals gotten a bad name. We should just call ourselves progressive because I'm a progressive. And so she was openly a progressive. So she was, not trying to institute communism. And I know she wasn't going to, if she had the 2 terms, 8 years as president, she wasn't going to try to do communism then because she knows that America is not ready for it. But she was going to try to progress us down this path. As far as the the population, legislatures would tolerate the push, whether that's a little or a lot, she's a progressive. And so, yes, so we are long-term trying to move Europe away from left-wing progressivism of the various parties into a more right-wing government, more traditional, more conservative government. Now, like I just said, Bill and Hillary Clinton are 2 different people, and I do truly believe Bill Clinton is not at his core a progressive. He is an old-school populist Democrat coming out of Arkansas. Okay, and, Trump is an old-school New York Democrat populist, not a conservative. Now, it appears conservative compared to the modern radical left that is dominating the Democratic Party and a lot of the media and other things. But so both Bill Clinton and, if you look at Bill Clinton talking about illegal immigration, not maybe what he did, but what he talked about, sounds a lot like modern day Trump. So they're not the same. And Marine Le Pen and her father Le Pen, I'm blanking on his name, I'm picturing him though, they're different people. He was, and I take it to be different people and not the same viewpoints. He was much more radically right, I believe, truly more radically right than Marine Le Pen. Now, I could be wrong. She could just be hiding her true beliefs, but I don't think she's as radical as her father. So we're trying to long-term push Europe a bit more right, down the right side. So that's how I see these things here. Let me go back up. I sort of not look at chat when I monologue like this. So let's go. Yeah, what long term and turn. Can't imagine why they don't like us. Well, like I say, it's the current regime, including government and media. We are trying to shift in Europe, and so those people don't like us, and then they influence the general population. Afghanistan was a lost cause, but in a way, the Taliban's political views have changed drastically thanks to U.S. occupation. Okay, and I won't disagree with you that they've changed because of the U.S. occupation there. I would not say, well, from the radical left, it's a lost cause. I would not say U.S. involvement was a lost cause. I think the U.S. again, the U.S. State Department and a lot of the government believes in systems. Okay, now they come from a cultural viewpoint that most people agree and do trust the system. So they believe that if they were just to put a system, whether it's a justice system, an electoral system, a constitution, whatever, if you just put the right system in place, because it's part of their basic belief structure. If they put their system in place, and they put the right system in place, things will just work out right. That's not the case, in my opinion. This is why I think firing a lot of State Department people is a good thing, because I don't think they truly understand. They think too much, as I've been talking about around World War I, if those have been watching those earlier live streams and what we've lost. They are very much in that modern sort of cogs and formulas. People are cogs that can be shaped. Oh, sure, they're individual, and naturally some people are a bit different, but with the right education, the right sort of societal programming, we can turn them into reasonably any excuse me, any cog, and if we just get the right formula, system, government system, business system, how a business is structured and operate, we just get the right systems, everybody's equal. Or, all these different cultures are equal. Afghanistan, Arabic culture, Thai culture, American culture, Peruvian culture. We just get the right systems, everything's going to run. So we tried to be the neutral arbiters in Afghanistan, as opposed to, hey, what good warlords that will support us? Okay, we'll support you. You need weapons to beat up on your neighbor who doesn't support us? Good. Here's some weapons. Go beat up on your neighbor. Oh, this other good warlord here? Oh, hey, you're good here. And instead of going, we could have, I think, built a coalition, not of who gets elected and who's, no, if we had just gone for certain warlords, certain tribal leaders, certain groups, we could have put in place a thing that would have resisted successfully Taliban retake over. And because we had enough time, I think with enough armaments, paying the people the right way, and setting that up instead of trying to make some modernist Afghan state. That's why the Soviet Union was failing, trying to making a modernist Afghan state that then they invaded. Because when the Soviet Union invaded Afghanistan, the government was friendly to Russia, but it was failing. Or not moving fast enough. I mean, it had control of Kabul and a couple of the major cities, but Russia felt it needed to come in and, take over and support its local allies. But, so yes, the progressive or revolutionary, whether Soviet or American, the progressive plan was always a lost cause. But had we properly engaged with Afghanistan after our occupation, we needed to go in and conquer Afghanistan because of their unwillingness to turn over Al-Qaeda and those elements to us, or allow us to, without, we'll stand back and let you go take them. We don't want to die for that, but you can go in and get them. They wouldn't let us go in on our own and get them, or, protect them, or they wouldn't do it themselves. And I don't really think anybody in the Afghan government knew about the 2001 9/11 attacks, but they knew that Al-Qaeda was definitely taking on the West. So we needed to go in and deal with Al-Qaeda, and we needed to go in to a government that supported that, to show that the U.S. was willing to do this. So don't you, whoever, Pakistan, Iran, or somebody else thinks that you can just let a deniable other party, some other radical organization operate in your country, that, well, we didn't attack you, it was these guys over here, but we won't let you come. Excuse me. I'm sort of fighting off a cold that I'm sort of noticing today, so I'm not feeling real bad, but my nose is running a bit, and I'm sneezing a bit, so excuse me if I take care of that a bit much. So, we needed to go in after 9/11 to show that you can't allow organizations to operate within your country to do that kind of attack on the U.S. So I 100% agree with the American invasion of Afghanistan. Now, like I say, the way we continue to occupy it was a very big mistake. Either do it sort of, and I obviously just gave a vague overview sketch, but either do it the way I would recommend, or just leave, after 6 months or something, just get the hell out. We've got enough of the bad guys. We taught the government, and, don't do these things. We've killed enough of them. If they get back into power, fine, but they'll know that if they allow that to happen again, we're going to come out and do that again. And so we needed to do the Afghanistan invasion, but yeah. And hello, let's see, what is that? Dibbler? 986, how you doing? Nordic peoples show as happiest in the world. No, I think that was Bhutan. I think Bhutan had the happiest index in the world. So I don't know if Nordic peoples are like Bhutanese. Bhutan has a very anti-immigration policy that they've kicked out a lot of various peoples from the region that had refugeed into Bhutan over the years, because they were happy and they didn't want these other people coming in to disrupt them. And I know some Norwegian people, particularly, and also a few Swedes and Danes. Some of you may be around or seeing this. I won't identify you right now. But, and I think they are generally very happy, except for all the foreigners coming in and making, rapey rape and other things like that. The answer is usually somewhere in the middle. Yes, and I can agree with you on the answer is often somewhere in the middle, but we're just trying to maybe not turn all Europe into radical right, but we're trying to make it so that there is a right and a left in Europe, as opposed to a left and a left, or a left and a center. I would say most European parties today, outside of what the quote-unquote radical right, but the British Labour, British Liberal Democrat, and British Conservatives were left and center at best, okay? And France, for the stuff, was maybe left and center, but there's no right, just left and center. Now, within their political scope, there, something's right, but I would say more objectively, it was just left and center parties, and the same with Germany. The CDU/CSU was mostly, really at best a centrist party, though particularly under Merkel, it was moving much more to the left, as opposed to Helmut Kohl, who was a conservative. So the Conservative Party moved at best to the center, and so it was the center versus the left as being, the Social Democrats, and then of course there's the radical left that sometimes would need to be part of the coalition to get enough seats to control the Bundestag. So it was sort of more left and left, and so we're trying to create a world that there is a right-wing, whether you want to call it conservative or whatever, a right-wing government that will at times enter politics and not just be seen as a few nut jobs in their legislatures that we don't have to pay any attention to because they'll never have a majority. So whatever they want doesn't freaking matter. They can just shout their heads off in Parliament and put up their posters. We're going to keep them out of media. We're going to keep them out of any sort of institutions. And we can just ignore them, and we'll have the center and the left, or the left and the left. I think the U.S. is bringing it much more back. So that's what I see. So I agree with firing firing a lot of our State Department people that may have a lot of institutional knowledge, as in to know the different peoples in these governments and knowing a lot of the stuff. I will agree that we may be to some degree hurting ourselves, but I think a bunch of them are just so ideologically either captured or just part of the left. And then I think a bunch of them are just stupid. I mean, they may be able to pass the tests and all, but like I was saying, that if you want to liberalize, if you will, Afghanistan, the choices they were making to liberalize, are counterproductive, and they couldn't see that. That even though the program itself might be successful in that there are little boys and little girls going to an Afghan school, might be, and I don't know, that have these leftist school books, and the teachers might actually, because hey, there were people that supported the Soviet Union in Afghanistan, and were communists and, modernists or whatever. And so some of these people and their viewpoints, whether they themselves or the people that have followed on with their viewpoints, are around in Afghanistan. And so they may have full classrooms, and they may be spewing out this ideology to the children, and the children may be believing it because the children absorb what people around them say and do. No, they may also hear that and hear what their parents are saying and reject the school, or may reject the parents and go with the school or whatever. It may be successful in that sense, but the reaction of the rest of society is counterproductive. So you may have a certain level of success, but it's counterproductive. Let's see what Dibbler is saying. Putting the left and the right aside, it comes down to economic models or a mix of Smithsonian trickle-down economics versus Keynesian, which advocates government intervention to stabilize the economy. Yes, a lot of it is that. Keynesian, Smithsonian, or however you're saying it, is, I presume you're taking Adam Smith and various other capitalist theorists. Keynesianism does work, people. Keynesianism does work. Keynesianism has a big price, a big cost to it. Okay? And a good example of Keynesianism working is the U.S. industry during World War II. Okay? It is very Keynesianism. because all those guns and all those bombers and all those tanks have no economic benefit that you're making. It would be just like making statues to put in everybody's yard, even if whether they're pretty or ugly, but they have no economic benefit to society. If the government paid for, hey, everybody gets a cool statue, pick out which one. We have 1,000 different versions. You get to have the one you want in your front yard. We'll deliver it. You just pick it out. Government's paying for it. Your tax money's paying for it. So it's not like anything you can buy, sell, or trade or have any real value. It's just, and if you want 2 or 3, we'll eventually get you more. So, you want the whole collection. It'll just take time. That's Keynesianism, if you will. And I know I'm oversimplifying it if you're an economist and you go, no, you're getting this wrong, gamer. No, I understand, and I had a professor that taught me what Keynesianism is, and I don't remember all the details, but just trying to simplify the thing. It works, but we can look at up until Kennedy, and he's the one that, got rid of the high tax rates. The original Kennedy president, Democrat, got rid of the high tax rates, up to 90-some% for the highest tax brackets in America. Now, where we can't really view the economic value of an M1 Garand defending capitalism, meaning if you don't have the guns, you don't have capitalism, right? If you don't win the war, whether it's communism or fascism or somebody takes over your country, it doesn't matter what, how good capitalism works. So there are elements of Keynesianism, and industrialization also, not so much Keynesianism in America, but industrialization during Keynesianism in Europe, using American industry in World War I and then in World War II, which much more direct Keynesianism. It works, but there's a high economic cost to it. So those that are ideologically Keynesianism, I think are wrong, because you use it conservatively, or you use it in like World War II in very catastrophic circumstances. You do use Keynesianism, but there's a lot of negative, and socialism, leftism isn't Keynesianism. That's I mean, they may be Keynesianist, but that's different than Keynesianism. You can be people that believe in property rights, like, hey, this is my factory. I own all this factory. I own all the land. I own all the machinery. I own everything here. I own the intellectual property rights, the patents, or the like intellectual property rights, to make Star Wars figures. I own all this stuff. It is mine, and you can't take it away. Now the government can come in and go, hey, we'll pay you to make something with that. Being Keynesianistic, and still recognizing that, yeah, he owns all the rights to it. Now, maybe the emergency Keynesianism of a conservative nation state, well, we got to have you make M1 Garands for the war effort. Otherwise you won't have a factory because somebody will come in and take it away from you, or it'll be blown up or whatever. But normally we respect your property rights. We're just going to use the government to try to make you, make radios. We'll buy radios that we're going to give to the populace. So we'll employ your workers. We'll employ the workers who make the plastics, who make the other components that go into your factory. So that you could still have a certain levels of market economies. Whether majorly or minorly market economies. You can still have property rights, and you can still have a lot of that other stuff under Keynesianism. So Keynesianism works, but if you do too much of it, there's going to be a very, very big economic price. Now, the U.S. did, I would say, successfully negotiate its way out, partially by getting off the gold standard and silver and whatnot. And we can talk about good or bad of that, and there's discussion on both sides on that. And I actually sort of have the fiat currency isn't the worst thing in the world. It's how you deal with the fiat currency as opposed to just have everything gold or silver based. But we did negotiate our way out of that in the post-World War era to some reasonably good degree. But there's high cost to that thing. So Keynesianism works for people. But Keynesianism, if you can avoid it, is best. If you don't have to do it, don't do Keynesianism. If you can get away with doing more Smithsonian or whatever with your, Adam Smith and capitalism. If you can do it mostly that way, that's the best way to do it. But you may get in situations that you do need that. So yes, I am not 100% against Keynesianism when it's necessary. Yes, okay. Politics aside, world over will tell the people what they think they want to hear. Politician, yes, everybody will say yes. One sort of meme is a bunch of people standing in a line behind somebody that, little sort of fair booth kind of thing or whatever that says comforting lies, and then next to them harsh truths, and nobody wanting to stand in the line for harsh truths. So yes, there's absolutely that kind of thing. I came for the game, got a lecture on politics instead. Anyway, it was fun listening to you. Well, thank you. For those of you, and there are a few new people here, the purpose of my channel, this channel here, is to talk about, and we haven't done too much 18th century here today, but it's to talk about how these generally historically based games, often World War II, just don't want to only do World War II, and talk about how they relate to history and ideas and concepts. So we play the games, but we also talk about other societal, and people get, like I say, I'll respond to the chat, and which may take me off on tangents. If that is unenjoyable for you, I understand, and this is not going to be the channel for you. And I definitely have people that tell me that, and I wish them well, but I'm not going to change. Now, maybe I should play a bit more. I've been lecturing a bit much, then my balance may not between how much playing versus how much, chat on things I got too much cavalry versus infantry in this army here. I think we'll put you over here because of the river and other things. So it's a mix of commentary in games. And sometimes it's more history, sometimes it's more politics, old or new or whatever. And hey, you want to hear me start talking about Ptolemaic politics and all that stuff when I play? You can look at our not very well watched. Why do I blank on proper nouns at times? Gonna go look it up. The game name, Paradox. Why do I do this? Almost got it, but let me just Imperator Rome. That's it. I was looking for that name. Imperator Rome. Look at my Imperator Rome series, and we'll be talking a lot about ancient politics and ancient viewpoints, not modern, not all, at least mostly not. So you can check that out. But yeah, it's not just the game. It's the society, culture, and history and other things. Okay, I think that's how we're going to deploy. Come up, okay, and push pause. Now we're going to give orders. These guys over here are going to go across the river and head over here. We are facing a larger army than us this time. See, now, the last few games, it had very much been, I knew I was going to win the battle. I could be wrong about it, but I believed I was going to win the battle. It was how well I was going to do it with, fewish casualties. Okay, you come to there. Now I'm facing a bigger opponent that looks to be in better condition. So I might not win this battle. You come to here. Speaking of playing, watching the dev live stream changes to the game and seeing the thought process is fun. Oh, I'm sure Turnlow. I have not watched much of that, honestly. Not that I wouldn't want to, I just haven't. Unfortunately, my life has been busy with a lot of other things, and the stuff that I normally like to watch has not been... I'm having trouble getting through some of that. Because, like, all day Thursday, basically. I was driving to and from California for my secret mountain base here, and that about 8 hours each way. And then most of yesterday I slept. So okay, we're gonna sort of put you out here because there's a lot of them. We're gonna put you out here as a flanker this time. See how all this goes. Okay, and so these guys are all got movement orders. These guys haven't yet, so we're going to send you again way out on the flank. We're going to go out on the flanks. And I'm hoping to get to these lines of hills before they do. I don't know that I can, but I'm hoping. I can stand in the middle of, get to the middle of the field and stand there if that's going to be all, what I can do. Where I do see it would be a problem if I got some of the units up and not some of the other ones. Have I installed the red button yet? No. I don't know which red button you're thinking of, whether that's Overlord DVD's red button, or because his base is at the center of the world. Mine's just up in the mountains. Or whether that's the all secret bases need a red button. Okay. Well, like I said earlier, I'm going to build a studio. Actually, I'm in one home right now, and the other home is halfway renovated. It needs to, part of the floor is in on some of the rooms, and some of the rooms need repainting, and the newer floor put in and whatnot. So I'm living in one house. I'm going to have the other house done. On that, I've already picked out the room I'm going to build a studio in it, so you'll get to see me, and when I do air quotes, you'll see me doing air quotes and all that kind of good stuff. But also cool background and other things. And it's not going to be so much of a gaming channel. So this will probably sort of stay the gaming channel. But that's going to be more produced videos. History talks and lots of stuff on firearms and other stuff. So I'll take your advice. Turn low. You can get the Turn Lova. I don't know if you want to that sort of W, but I'll have a red button. I wasn't sure that I needed one. I definitely knew of having secret base ever. But what does the red button do if we ever push it? That's what we gotta know. And is it gonna do something something that we never push it, or is it just an alert button like, oh hey, yes, somebody's saying communist something or other, or what is going to be the red button? What does the red button do, people? And I don't know that we'll decide today, even if you come up with a good thing. And anybody, of course, can come up with an idea of what the red button should do. Pop-up shotgun? Now, just so that you know, if you don't know, during a live stream, and I've seen one case of it, that it was a gun channel on YouTube. I think one that does things, relatively responsibly. We can talk about that. I haven't watched all the content. That during one of his live streams, and he knew the policy, but he saw one of the firearms on his wall behind him was sort of like a painting being out of alignment. It was sort of out of alignment. He just reach over like with a finger and touch it and push it up in alignment. And that somebody was, because I don't think an AI can quite watch you just literally touching a gun finger on it, putting a finger on a gun and just slightly moving it. But that got that live stream killed immediately. immediately taken off the air. He didn't take the gun off the wall, didn't put it in his hand, didn't do anything. So you cannot touch a firearm during a live stream. Now you can do in a video because, and I understand this. Now you could have approved streamers just because of their track record. I understand that you don't want something horribly to go wrong on a live stream, and you don't want, particularly with some people that would try to egg on, do it, whatever it is, egg on somebody during a live stream, and somebody may do something stupid or really stupid during a live stream. And I understand that. I don't necessarily, because in Rumble, on that channel, not streaming there right now, you don't have to shut me off. On Rumble, you can like a gun, a gun match, cowboy action shooting, or IPSC or whatever. You can live stream that. You can live stream a gun talk, that kind of thing. And yes, there can be an accident. Somebody, oh, this gun's unloaded, bang, it isn't. Or something like that. Something can go wrong, but they do allow gun handling during a live stream. So just, you say pop-up shotgun. Well, hey, Sev, how you doing? Okay. And this, I'm not going to announce it now. It is possibly subject to change, but basically I have a name for the channel, and a few of the viewers do know it. Is actually come up with by a viewer. I think it is good. I may get into a naming, let people contribute to the possibility of a name sometime. Okay, you guys are still, you're still moving into position. So I have a lot of things planned for the channel, and it won't be just another, just another gun thing. It's going to be other interesting stuff, I hope, along with guns. And also trying to do it in a way that I have not. I've seen things similar, but not quite the way I want to do it. They've got artillery, we don't. Definitely see that these guys are moving much slower through the forests. Okay, it looks like mostly we're getting into positions here. They still have it. Okay. Let's just get a little bit behind these guys, hopefully out of line of fire so much, but not to give command. Bonuses here. Here we're sort of relying upon the Gibbons for protection. Exchanging fire. Drop-down maps at hand would also work, but not funny. I don't know if that's maybe coming up from the new Sea and Arsenal stuff. Well, what I have, and I've had since childhood, and it's just been in another room in my apartment, but I got it moved, and I actually moved it myself, is a large wall size from like you would see in a school wall map of the world. That's like, it's more than 6 feet. It's maybe like 8 feet across. That's it's sort of a rubber type map. That's a relief map. Actually, the hills are higher. The mountains are higher and whatnot. And that's going to go onto one of the side walls in the studio. That'll be on one of the side walls, not the back. So I'm not sure exactly how I'm going to work all the cameras and the switching, but I would definitely be able to get up and use a pointer to point with that places on the map if I want to, or just a sort of a static display that you just sort of see on one of the sort of bit on the side on the wall there. So that's going to be in one of the studios. Obviously, but behind me I'm going to have type of bookshelves with a lot of stuff on them, books as well as other things. So whether for live stream or just making videos, to have an interesting sort of background behind me. I've got a lot of interesting things to put there. I mean, more than would fit on the bookshelves. It's collecting over the years. Okay. So now we've seen a little bit, they have a little bit of cavalry here. and artillery. So what we're going to do here is they're definitely light on the cavalry. We're going to move all these guys up to here, get into their rear, so that if they stay facing my troops that they're shooting at, hopefully we'll get them in the rear. And or make them turn to the flanks and allow these are jumbled up a bit here, and allow my fewer infantry to better concentrate on the infantry that on the infantry that's sort of opposing my infantry, if you will. Well, thank you, Tyranno. Hope it comes out and looks cool at the thing. Now it's sort of an old one from at least the 80s, because I got it back in the 80s, so it's probably from the 70s or something. And it definitely still has like the USSR and, you know, Burma's Burma instead of Myanmar and whatnot. So the political boundaries, you know, like I say, just the USSR, it doesn't have like Ukraine and Belarus and the Baltic states so much as an independent kind of thing. But I sort of like that it's that way, because it, in essence, it shows that borders and country names, and not just names, but you know how they're organized, can shift and change very much in one person's lifetime, because it was current in my lifetime to what it is to today. So you know, what's going to be the map of Ukraine when the war's over? Is there going to be Ukraine? Probably. What's its border going to be? The border that it was when the Soviet Union broke up? Probably not, because it's probably not going to get Crimea back. It might get some of the current occupied territories back. It might. I don't know. I know there's the various peace plans, but that been proposed. I don't know. You know what's going to be the actual outcome. Just because Trump or somebody has a peace plan that's been published with a map doesn't mean that it's going to be that kind of thing. So, yeah, it's sort of, you know, it's obviously frozen in time and back a ways, but it looks sort of cool. And there's one thing, I do love talking while I'm playing Hearts of Iron, because it has a global map that I can, you know, jump to wherever that we're talking about and show that place on the screen. So that is definitely a handy tool. But so the wall map just looks cool and can be a nice tool for pointing things out. And what's Sev saying? So got lucky on the cav leaders to get extra damage commanders? A bit, but not great. Or unit perks. Unit perks, we've definitely been, as you can see down here, definitely been working on some of that with, you know, various horseshoes. I don't like the way a lot of this does, these various unit perks, but again, I'm playing the game, so I am taking advantage of them. Now, some of these units are sort of fresh in my forces that are obviously not upgraded, but I am working with that. Saw a Historical Gamer got one cav unit with insane damage bonuses. Yes, and I've played a bit more than I played on you know, during live streams, but I'm very much still a novice at this game. I think I get all the basic principles of it, you know, of the game, not just of the warfare period. Excuse me. Like I say, I'm starting to get a cold today. Hope it doesn't get too bad. It's not bad right now. It's just a bit of a runny nose and sneezing once in a while. Okay. I mean, if you okay, yeah. So yeah. And there's definitely quality differences, and I've read a lot a few years ago on the Napoleonic era. I have a good collection of books, both historical fiction, and, you know, when I say good collection, easily 100 books on historical fiction, and which is, some of it's bad. I mean, it's bad history. It's not that well written. Some of it's well written, but not good history. The best is good history and well written, with just putting in some fictitious elements to it. But like the Sharp series or Hornblower written, you know, those are some of the classics. But also more modern authors as well. But also a lot of, you know, actually just picked up our local library here in this town has, like a lot of libraries in America at least, has a section of books for sale. Mostly books that people donate to the libraries, mostly to sell. You know, And so they're like $1 or $2. And I just picked up 6, 8 books on the Napoleonic Wars, including several good, nice books on Napoleon. So I haven't really read those, obviously, because I got those just a couple of weeks ago. And so, yeah, there's definitely quality differences between units. And I get that this is a game, and now I would do a bit, to some degree, the type of unit would just, if you're a cuirassier unit, which these are Prussian cuirassiers, they would have cuirasses. Okay, just sort of, yes, of course, they're cuirasses, so cuirassiers, so they would have cuirasses. And all shoes would have horseshoes, that basically did. Now, we can talk about different types of horses, very much so, that had different characteristics. Some big and strong and great for something like a cuirassier, which is heavy. Because he's heavy and his equipment's heavy, and they're meant to do some things. And then some of these can be like Cossack horses. I think I got it's the same unit here. Steppe horses, basically Cossack or whatever. Lighter but good stamina. So I agree with these kind of things as power-ups, if you will, for certain units, whether captured, like these are presumably captured steppe horses, or whether just natural to the unit. So I agree with some of these, if you will, power-ups or differentiations between, do you have a lot of field musicians? Like, all units would have a drummer. A lot of units might also have a fifer. Obviously, Highland units would have a bagpiper and a drummer. But would you have a larger band? Now, some, I know the English army the best in this time period, but I also know the French somewhat, and some of the other German armies a little bit too. And so I don't know exactly how Frederick of Prussia's armies were exactly set up. But some units in the British Army would have an actual sort of field musicians, not just fifers and drummers, but would have an actual sort of smallish band that would be out, that would sort of, the bandsmen would work as medical orderlies, help with the wounded once the fighting got going. But marching out onto the field, as we're sort of doing here, they're coming right after me here. This is okay. They're okay. We'll see how this works out. But would, as the approach march and before the main contact happened, they could be playing music, which would keep your morale up and maybe sound intimidating to your enemies. And so, I could see the idea of having more field musicians than just the basic minimum. But cylindrical ramrods, that to me doesn't seem like a good power-up. They all have that, of one form or another. Okay, afraid Ukraine will get a raw deal and the peace deal that will one day come. Yeah, what can you do? You got invaded by a bigger power. And unless NATO's going to step in, and of course if NATO steps in, you always have the possibility of going to nuclear war. Not just widening the war, having a Finnish front and having a Poland front or whatever, but in the Baltic Seas front and front out at the ocean, even if we don't invade Vladivostok, and I might be able to get behind that if it wasn't for the real possibility of throwing nukes around, even if it isn't going to be global thermal nuclear war, but just a few nukes here and there. As an American, I don't want to risk that over the existence of Ukraine, okay? Flat out. I, as an American, do not want to go to nuclear war over Ukraine, whether it even exists or not. Oh, is it going to be genocide? Yeah, the genocide happens. I'm not going to risk America's nuclear destruction and I have some Ukrainian friends, and I don't know if any of them are watching now, and I feel for them, and I'm definitely morally on their side entirely, okay? I truly am morally entirely on their side in this war, but I do not want to risk nuclear destruction over the existence of their country. Now, they may want to, but that's them. And if Europe, not NATO, but some European nations want to try to push that, well, nuclear war, I don't quite think, France wants to go to nuclear war over Ukraine. Now, supplying Ukraine with weaponry and things, yeah, that's cool. Now maybe, do I think we're overdoing it? Maybe. But yeah, it sucks. It's bad things happen, unfortunately, and Ukraine is partially to blame here, people. Ukraine is not blameless. And the big policy is Ukraine did not militarize itself properly and well before the war. Okay? It did not. It either had politicians who knew that this was a real possibility. Oh, and Russia had already sort of pseudo-invaded, well, had invaded and taken away Crimea. That wasn't enough of a warning. The Donbass rebels that were clearly Russian-equipped and had Russian volunteers, whether they were officially part of the Russian army or not, just in disguise, or whether they were truly just volunteers, were fighting in the Donbass, and they still didn't militarize their country. All of the stuff that they are doing, like building the drones and doing the stuff, maybe not all the NATO support or all the other support, but the stuff that they were doing could have been started prior to the main invasion that's happened. They did not. Okay, people, they did not. Whether they just thought the world, wasn't going to go down that route anymore, invasions weren't going to happen, end of history, Hayek's End of History, very, very damaging and dangerous book. Or whether they were just so corrupt that they knew that this was a likelihood, but would not do anything about it. And that's the fault of the Ukrainian people, because, hey, you can revolt against your government. And they did, obviously. There was the sort of Ukrainian, revolution. But they allowed, maybe Ukrainian nationalists versus Russian nationalists get in power. But they made decisions prior to the war. So it's partially their fault. Russia thought they could have an easy war of it. I don't think Russia would have done this if they thought it was going to be this level of war. And so, so I partially blame the Ukrainians. They didn't start it. I'm not blaming it like they're at fault for starting it. No, God, no. But they made themselves out to be an easier target. And I don't think they'll make that mistake in future. I think they'll I hope they'll at least do it, not just a standing army, but sort of a Switzerland mass army where everyone has an AK-47 or whatever at home with ammo, an armed country, not one of these disarmed European countries that only allow the military to play with weapons and keep them locked up, because most armies, I don't know if you know this, people, most armies, the guns are always locked up. And unless they're going to be used at the range, and then they're taken back and locked up. And so it's only a few troops at a time get to take the guns out under supervision at the range and lock them up. And if they're doing a field exercise out there in the field, they only have blank adapters attached to the guns and no live ammunition. So they're, most armies are, to an extent, are disarmed most of the time. They don't get to have in their barracks, sitting in their barracks there with a gun and live ammunition that they can all of a sudden just pick it up and go. That's why that one guy who, I forget his name right now, I may remember, but I'm not going to say it if I remember, who took in the 2 FN-57s into the base in Texas and shot up a bunch of people because all the soldiers were all disarmed. It's outside of the sort of military police or security, gate security force. But, he was a soldier or whatever, So the armies are even mostly in modern armies are disarmed. Don't do that, people. I can understand, while you're, under army, but have an armed population like America and like Switzerland, and even Israel has learned its lesson, I think, in having a disarmed population. With its October 6th attack, Israel has seen a massive uparming of the population. Have an armed population, people. Okay, I'm going to go get some more tissues. I'll be right back, and I'll get more on the chat, and we'll continue the battle. Let's try to get through all this chat, and then we'll continue the battle here. Okay. Yes, and Turnlove says, it works a bit better if you are covering history. I saw 7 new countries created in my lifetime in Europe. Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, definitely like the breakup of Yugoslavia, the creation of the Baltic states, Ukraine, and whether you count Belarus as a creation of a country. Yeah, you've got, various countries like that create over time. And so whatever you are, whatever nation, but whether you're like a Russian nationalist or a French nationalist, your borders aren't inviolable, people. You know, I know France has lots of overseas territories. They may be losing some in the Pacific, particularly that may be pushing for independence, and whether France is willing to keep the boot on them, and not that they should or shouldn't. I mean, it depends on how you keep the boot on them. But go, no, you're not independent. You're a colony. You know, you're a colony out here and somewhere in the Pacific. You know, or something like that. You know, we don't care what you think. You know, we may care what you think in a democratic sense, but not in a breakaway sense. You know, we're not going to let you go independent. You know, they can do that, but they're not inviolable. They're not forever. Get some vitamin D and C. Yes, I've been taking some various, not just cold symptom suppression, but some stuff that's designed to that has vitamin C in it and D and whatnot that will hopefully make the cold less bad and or shorten it. You've seen this Hornblower TV series, very good. Have you seen the original Hornblower movie starring Gregory Peck? That's very good. It does sort of, if you watch the Hornblower series, you watch that whole together, and it's on a tighter budget, and then watch the Hornblower movie. It all works together. And the Hornblower movie takes the original 3 books and makes it basically the whole 3 books into one story. And that's as he's, you know, a captain for that, not as a lieutenant and ensign and whatnot. Not ensign. Ensign's in the army. Midshipman. Sorry. Yes, and it was good. And hello, Jamnuska. Good to have you here. Ukraine has the same problem Russia has. Horribly corrupt leadership. Absolutely. That's the kind of thing I'm blaming for having ineffective government, which makes you weak, which makes you a target for the aggressor. That's what I blame Ukraine for. Not that Ukraine caused the war by attacking Russia or was somehow, you know, doing something bad otherwise. No, they're to blame for not being effective in preparing for their defense. Now, if you look, you know, if you look like you're enough of a porcupine and you're a hungry animal, you very well may go to some other animal to try to get food, you know, if you're another bigger predator. Now, if you're stuck in a box with you and a porcupine, you may eventually brave the stickers of the porcupine to kill it, to eat it, because you've got to do it. But whether you're successful or not is another question. But it definitely don't look like a victim. And that's for even individuals. You know, you can say, don't wear a miniskirt, and you're blaming the victim for the rapist. Well, okay, wear a miniskirt, but carry a pistol in your purse, you know, or pepper spray or whatever, be prepared, because if you're walking in a lonely parking structure to your car and there's somebody who's going to do a bad actor to you, whether you're in a miniskirt or a pantsuit, they can just be, a bad, person who's going to do bad things. Be prepared, whether you look like a victim or not, but if you are prepared, like have a gun in your purse, and if somebody starts to be aggressive, you don't have to pull it out and shoot them. You just pull it out and say, I've got to, show that you've got a gun and leave me alone, and they'll probably leave you alone, because even if they're just going to rob you or something, they probably don't want to get shot just to get a few bucks off of you. So yeah, it's that sort of thing is what I blame Ukraine for on the war, is not being prepared, and not looking to be prepared. Been that way ever since becoming independent. But I think all the former, I don't know how bad it is in places like the Baltic states, but I think all of the former Soviet Union countries are more corrupt than, say, Western European countries or the United States. There's corruption. We can see how many former governors of the state of Louisiana. No, not Louisiana. Well, maybe there too. Illinois. Something like half of the governors of the state of Illinois have gone to prison, after their term. Literally, since like World War II or the World War I or something like that. Half of the former governors leave office and then get convicted for crimes during their office and go to prison. Not just like, oh hey, I have to pay a fine, or oh hey, you did something. Yeah, midshipman, thank you, Foka. See the name slightly changed there. Yes. So yeah, there's corruption in America, and some of it in some of it bad corruption, some of it minor, but that doesn't make it all right. It just exists. So yeah, but Ukraine, I cannot tell, at least pre-war, a difference between Russia and Ukraine and some of the other former Soviet states as to the level of corruption. Is some country more or less corrupt. I would not want to do business there. Louisiana put one after going to prison. Yeah. Oh yeah. And sometimes they come back. Yeah, no, that's why Louisiana, but I was thinking of the state of Illinois. So yeah, and whatnot. So U.S. has its corruption issues, most assuredly. And not just sort of crony things like, oh, hey, I've appointed my nephew, the guy in charge of highways. Yeah, that's a corruption, but it isn't illegal. I mean, so long as no one's taking bribes or doing things else. Just like, oh, I trust my nephew. He's studied, government. He's studied things and whatever. And I'm going to put him in charge of, managing the state highways. To me, that may or may not be a good practical choice, and it may or may not be a good look choice, meaning it looks like nepotism. Obviously, it very well could be, but maybe the person is a expert on running highways or something. But whether they're good choices in that sense, I don't think there's anything, ultimately morally wrong or criminally wrong by appointing a relative who's going to run an office supposedly. Yeah, I got elected after. Yes, I got that. So I don't think that is, like I say, morally wrong, because if you think they're going to do a good job and you trust them and whatever, yeah, I would, in theory, appoint a nephew or a cousin or something to a political type job like that if I saw them as doing a good job, being able to do a good job in promoting friends and family. But that is a level of type of corruption, can be. But that isn't, at least in the United States, that is not illegal. So that wouldn't put me to prison. Now, if we found out there were bribes being paid and other things, and he was, collecting bribes that were then, for paid, construction companies were doing kickbacks to him, and then the governor's getting, a taste of those kickbacks. Well, that'd be criminal, yes. So if that's going on, and that type of thing has happened, big scale, small scale, it could be like a small town kind of thing, that has happened, and that is wrong. But the mere fact that you're somewhat corrupt in that you're sort of helping out friends, if you will, not to the illegal sense. Yeah, that definitely happens very much. We got hidden corruption in Finland, and I always find it funny how we are listed on the top less corruption system in the world. Well, you can have both. You can still be corrupt and be some of the less. That's true. The system works by asking said countries' elites the questions about corruption. Well, I don't know. Well, they taught the rest of the country how to be dirty. Well, California was founded by crooks, if you people don't realize. And exploiters, particularly. Because the people came for the gold. The people who really made the money, there were a few people that got really rich off gold. But most of the people who got really rich were selling the miners and the prospectors stuff, or the people running the railways and running that. Oh, California was formed on corruption and exploitation. It was formed. Now, we've gotten better than places like Huey Long's Louisiana, or fun person to read up on. Oh, I know of him, and a little bit, but not an expert on Huey Long. Or, I think it was Louisiana, is it? Or Mississippi. I think it was Louisiana. Or, looking at Illinois, those are some of our two most corrupt states. But hey, all of the states are somewhat corrupt. Nothing's perfect. And so, yeah, it's not perfect by any means. I'm not trying to make out America somehow perfect and the rest of the world is terrible. No, America is better than most of the world. Communist China, modern day Russia, India. I wouldn't want to live in India, or most all of Africa, okay. So America is better, the United States, as I'm saying America, the United States is better than most all of Latin America, as for levels of corruption. I'm just talking about levels of corruption. Yeah. So, yeah, America is definitely on the top high percent of largest countries. We're not talking Liechtenstein or however many people live up in Iceland or something. Those may sort of count as countries, but they don't sort of count as, in the sense that they are so small that comparing the levels of thing between those countries and others is just not a metric that should be done. So, not the politicians themselves, so they are clean. Yeah, well, favored deals on government contracts, etc. Yeah, oh yeah. L.A., Louisiana is for your. I'm from the South. Yes, yes, I understand. Yes, so definitely have that. Let's see if we can finish this battle today before I either get too much of a sore throat from talking, and it's starting to happen a little bit, or it's okay. We don't want these guys to come up and do musket volleys at us. We either want to charge them, or we want to stay out of range of them. One of the two. These guys are way up on their own here, and we get the horsies coming towards us. So what we're going to do is reform looking that way. Now, obviously, it's a bit of a reposition, but not. We're going to move you to here instead. So we're going to look like that. These guys are going to keep moving, but look like that and ready to deal with this horseshoe here. So we got 2 units firing at them somewhat effectively. So yeah, so the new people around here, please everyone, if you're interested, please, if you don't like my style, I understand it's not for everybody. Please remember to follow, subscribe, whatever's on service you're on. I know many of you are old friends here, of course. And of course, if you're on YouTube, liking the video or the live stream really does help. Maybe not a lot, but it does help a bit. Oh, pause, damn. Okay, well, at least they got a good... Okay, well, we're going to do a very short counter charge here. And we're going to send these cuirassiers in on their sort of flank. I'm hoping we're taking heavy losses. Oh, no, they're taking heavy losses. We're taking minor losses. Okay, they got driven off the map. Oh, or going to go off the map, I'm pretty sure, because they're way up there. You guys are going to move up just a bit. Here, get ready for these. Oh. You guys come here. These Prussian dudes. You guys come in this way. We're just going to let these guys read out. These guys are up on a hill behind their gibbons, so they're a little better protected. These guys are in skirmish order, so they hopefully don't take too heavy casualties, but still inflict some. I think we need to have to concentrate in. See if you guys come up to here. Scare them by getting on their flank. You guys, we're gonna have to charge these guys. So you guys come down here. You guys just head off over here. We're gonna put the artillery in the rear. You guys go this way. Cuirassiers. A bit more into the flank. So they have a choice. So they're going to remain facing these Prussian provincials, or are they going to turn and face our cuirassiers? So hopefully one of them will be able to hit them squarely on the flank. Hopefully for low casualty levels. Okay. I think that's enough. So we are going to charge right on the flank. These guys are going to charge. These. They fired into these guys, and now that they've fired, let's all go. You guys just move up. Hopefully with as few as casualties as possible, we'll take them. Okay, pause. Okay. Oh. Cuirassiers charge. They're well formed, but they're not formed up facing us, so hopefully, and now they just fired at sort of longish range. So you guys, you've taken your casualties before they can come in. Now you will be facing their bayonets. Hopefully we'll take them. They're retreating and probably shattering, yes. Okay, good. You guys move to here, and you guys move to here. Get ready to get these guys in the rear. How do we do out here? Okay, they've shattered. There. Come there and come down, right? They're retreating. Okay, good. So since they're retreating, you keep pushing up. And you're going to just come through the forest. Be fast, but we'll get through there. Actually, we're doing pretty good. They're a larger force than us. They just shot at these guys, so these guys charge. Okay, so let's zoom in here. Okay, they are still facing our main line here. So let's select these guys and have them charge. These guys charge. Pause it. We'll come back to that charge. Okay, well, I know you're sort of in the woods, but you get to hit them because they're still moving back. You keep moving forward. You keep moving forward. This really should not be happening much at all. That's just too much trees for the horses. That's how I would evaluate all of this. Okay, they are scattered. These guys here. Come after these guys. Don't know which they're marching to the rear, so they're probably. Let's see, our cuirassiers head that way. You guys head this way. Really don't want any of my units wrecked. They just fired, so go. Go, 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 go. You know, it looks like we've won this. Hopefully without too many casualties. Yes, victory. Okay. Okay, so we got a lot more money, a lot more. That'll help us get some artillery, I think. We, tobacco ration. Again, some of these things I think are I sort of get this to some degree, though. I would make these treatises that do things. I would put them up to this sort of level, or something that may be this level, as opposed to down to battalion, so that you can attach maybe one treatise to your overall commander that would have certain effects for all of the units, and then have the treatise here affect just the command of this guy and his subunits there. I know they do have, like I'm hovering over it, they do have their own sort of different skill sets, which is cool. I do see that. If you look at particularly something like Stonewall Jackson in the American Civil War, his forces were known as foot cavalry, in that they could move, at least strategically, at the speed of cavalry and get places very fast, faster than everybody was expecting at times. And it was definitely a lot up to his command and how much encumbrage he would allow his troops to have, how could they have tents, could they have whatever else, and that kind of thing, as well as he was an inspired enough leader that they would just go to that levels of exhaustion where they might not have for other other army commanders. Meaning I've marched enough for the day and I'm not going to keep marching so fast. But they would for him because he was a proven leader. Okay, do we want casualties? Well, you can see here that unit took fairly heavy at, but casualties we really don't need, and we have quite a few, so we probably don't need that as much. Money we might just have a good use for it with ammunition. That's a lot of ammunition. See, I don't know how much these vary for the type of victory. Definitely the size of the army you defeat definitely seems to be a thing. But I don't know if compared to, say, how many people we kill versus how many units we shatter versus how many units retreat, and then their status of their units, how much of either this stuff you attack, the type of victory as opposed to just that. So we don't need that. Do we want provisions? We're not terribly low. We got reasonably good veterans. See, I'm going to go with the money here. Okay. So, let's see. These guys here. Where's my... These guys here. I wanted to move these up to here, so we'll do that. They're a slightly smaller unit, so it reduced that. But we now have grenadiers with field musicians. Okay, well, I think that's going to be the end of the stream here. I want to thank Turnlow, Sev, Arno. Let me scroll back up the chat here because we've got some new people that are around, if they're still around. Dibbler, good to see you here. And Ricci, Santana, good to have you here. Hopefully you guys stay around often or come back often, however you want to say that. IKB, of course, thanks for hanging out earlier on. I know you went to go give a friend a ride and maybe not back yet, but thank you. So thank you all for hanging out with me. I love your inputs. I love talking about history, politics, society, culture, and all that stuff, and he's giving me the opportunity. So if you like that, I hope you guys will continue to hang out. I know some of the old things, and so we'll be back tomorrow. I say we'll because I believe Arno will be too. We'll be playing some War Thunder at the same time, and I will be back on Slitherine Monday. So in 2 days, I will be back on playing Starship Troopers for them. I'm back onto their... I got sick, guys. I don't know how many you know. So I just had to step off from all YouTube activities, and I just partially also, quite honestly, this getting out of California, the last sort of moved. I was starting to stream here, but I could have started to do Slitherine, but I just didn't want that schedule to interrupt all the various real important things to do with moving. So it wasn't until a while ago that I said I was available. So this is the first month. So I'll be back for that. And then they're doing a big day stream. I'll be doing just 1 hour on that. And maybe another stream for December. I don't know. but at least 2 streams in December for them. Right around Christmas, they're taking a few weeks off of streaming. Yes, U.S. War Thunder. We can maybe do some of that. That would be fine. Arna, and thank you, Eternal. I will definitely try to have a very good day here. My cold is not really bad. Like I say, it just slightly sore throat. I'm taking medicines for it, like that are definitely vitamin D and C and zinc and other things heavy. So hopefully it won't be a bad cold, but and not keep me from streaming. I may sneeze a bit, cough a bit, but hopefully it'll still be a good stream. So I'll be doing all those tomorrow in the next few days. So thank you all. It's good to be hanging out with you, like I say. So thanks. See you next time, everybody. If you're bored and whatever else, go check out some of my older videos on YouTube. Lots of interesting stuff there. Yeah, we can